Hey everyone, welcome to Sociastrology. Today we're going to take a look at the month of April on a collective and global level, and then we're going to take it through personally to see how it's going to be impacting you based on your rising sign. Before we dive into it, I do just want to announce that we are still running the Chart Your Destiny giveaway. So if you would like to be entered to receive a personal astrological reading with me, all you have to do is make sure that you're subscribed, leave a like on the video, and then comment below with wherever you're located. And as I say, Earth is specific enough if you don't want to go any more specific than that. And then you'll be entered to win, and I will announce the winner on May 1st this time. And also, there's information in the description box below if you want more information about memberships or personal readings. But without any further ado, let's go ahead and dive into it. So, this month is going to be quite a doozy. We have, of course, just run through our eclipse season, and we have just had Neptune move into Aries about a day and a half before this month starts. So this is all very new to us. And there's going to be additionally a lot going on in this month that we're going to need to definitely take very seriously, but it could offer us a lot of energy to kind of get over the hump or even the rut that we may have seen ourselves in recent months where we had all of these retrogrades and so forth. We still do have Mercury and Venus retrograde, but we have a lot of really intense energy coming up. So that should light a fire under us, but I am a little concerned about how it's going to look out in the world. So with all of that said, throughout the entire month, we have a building square between the Sun and Mars, and that's going to be for most of the month. It's also going to be sharpened by both of the lunations, both the full moon in Libra and the new moon in Taurus, because as the sun is moving from that fixed sign of Aries, where it'll have that full moon in Libra, so is Mars starting to gain speed as it's moving from Cancer, where it'll be in a square to the sun, out to Leo, where it's going to have a square to the sun. And then that's going to square that not only the full moon, which is in a cardinal sign, but then also the new moon, which is in a fixed sign. So we're really set up to be amping the living heck out of the Mars-Pluto opposition, which is taking part in the square between the Sun and Mars, but also then the broader T square between the Sun, Mars, and Pluto. And this can be pretty explosive. So we'll have to see how this plays out, but I have some ideas that I want to share with you. So additionally to all of that, I don't really follow the dark moon Lilith. I know some people do. If that is of any interest to you, just to add to all of this, when the Sun and Mars move into the fixed signs of Taurus and Leo, and then they are both making hard aspects to Pluto in Aquarius in the very first degrees, we also have the dark moon Lilith in the very early degrees of Scorpio. So that's just amping all of this up. It's making it a little bit colder and more distant, which is not so much the energy that I want to see with that when it comes to global affairs. But so in April, we will see powerful astrological dynamics shaping the month ahead. Neptune in Aries brings a focus on individuality, inspiration, and action, which I've just done a video about, two videos about that recently. So I'll link those in the description below as well, because I won't go super in depth with it during this month. I will consider it a bit in the forecasts for each sign, but it's going to be there for about 14 years. So I treated that on its own in a couple different videos. So we have a minor grand trine building up between Mars, Saturn, and Uranus, which is perfecting on April 4th. I've been talking about this also quite a bit recently, and that's going to encourage innovative yet structured changes while posing challenges to structures and institutions. On April 27th, we get the exact opposition between Mars and Pluto, creating intense confrontations, while the T square to the sun from both of those placements is adding pressure, especially in personal and professional power struggles and dynamics. And again, we'll see that, I think, mostly where it concerns power and coercion and force, themes like that coming up on the global stage. And especially highlighting then leadership, but we'll come into that much more deeply later. So the configuration between the Sun, Mars, and Pluto is also going to be exacerbated by Jupiter as it makes some tense minor aspects, as they're called, to all of those placements simultaneously in addition. So it's going to not only be super tense, but then it's going to be exacerbated by Jupiter, which tends to expand on or intensify anything that it touches. So that's going to be primarily, like, it's going to be strongest between the 19th and 25th of April, especially when Jupiter's involved in that. But I do want to emphasize the square between the Sun and Mars is really from the beginning of the month, maybe week 2 approximately, through week 3. So it's going to be a building and building and building pressure, which we're going to see several release points that could be quite explosive. So that in and of itself is going to increase our own willpower on a personal level. But again, it could also exaggerate challenges and conflicts due to ego. Mercury and Venus are going to be retrograde still in Pisces until April 7th and April 13th, respectively. And that's suggesting a period in the beginning of this month, the first half or so, of reflection and reevaluation, particularly in communication and relationships. Planets coming out, those two, as well as Saturn and I think, yeah, also Neptune, of course, they're going to be coming out of a condition which we consider to be under the beams, where they haven't been visible in the sky because they've been too close to the position of the sun. And so that's going to also be letting up this month, which I think is pretty cool because basically we've gone out into this like individualistic, independent Aries energy with both our thoughts and our values and our perspectives on things in a much more broad sense than even just Mercury. We've gone out into Aries. We've then gone back into Pisces to look at it differently and from a different angle. And then the sun is moving on out. We're getting some clarity, those planets becoming visible. And then as they start to retrace, as they go direct again as well, I think that we're going to have a much, much fuller understanding of questions of collectivities and sympathies and a broader understanding of people, generally speaking, as well as our own sense of spiritual values and our own sense of harmony, say, in the universe with these Piscean themes that we've been dealing with, but then also where we fit into it and where we're comfortable with it and where we would like to see that go for us in the future in this Aries part of the zodiac as well. It's a real step from the old into the new, but with a really heightened perspective by the end of this. So I think it's going to be pretty cool, and the picture is going to become a lot clearer throughout the month. So that'll allow for better insight and decision making. And then, of course, as the sun enters Taurus on April 19th, we shift into a more grounded, kind of stable phase within our own selves, within our perspective of where we're going in life, our goals and our motivations there. So April also is going to host many, many aspects to and from Venus. We also have that station from retrograde to direct from Venus, and both of the lunations this month in the full moon in Libra and the new moon in Taurus will both be ruled by that Venus. And during both of those lunations, Venus will be in Pisces where it exalts. So it's going to be a very interesting whole bunch of dynamics that we're dealing with when it comes to, again, our sense of what we like, of what we value, and what we enjoy. And that's going to be very heightened throughout the month. It's going to be a focus on relationship dynamics and then also financial matters and how all of that contributes to our sense of quality of life. So the movement of Mars into Leo on April 17th is going to bring a bold creative energy, while Mars trine to Neptune on the heels of that on the 19th is going to support spiritual and imaginative pursuits. So then we will have Venus finally moving into Aries, which we're going to probably look at a little bit more next month because it's so late in this month. But let's go ahead and move forward into the first week. So the first major thing that we have happening this week is that we have on the 3rd of April, Venus conjoining the North Node. Venus is retrograde, so we're going to get this specific aspect again on the 20th of this month, which I'll refer to it, but I'll describe it here so that I'm not repeating myself too terribly much. But this is a significant moment regarding the karmic underpinnings and a kind of sense of the future unfoldment of relationships, connection, harmony, of how we would like to see those play out better and what's best for us in our relationship. So we may see a clearing of the decks, but we're also then sowing the seeds of where those relationships and our connection to other people, generally speaking, the way that we do relationships, the way that we treat others and ourselves are unfolding going forward. So we're looking at a shift that influences like peace, diplomacy, empathy in the world. And there's a time of a kind of deeper awareness around the themes of peace, diplomacy, empathy that's emerging throughout this time. And I don't think it's a moment too soon. I know that I have some notes here later in the month about there's been this kind of interesting anti-empathy fad that's been going on recently. And I think we're going to see some developments and probably also some pushback on that throughout this month as well, with the connections between Saturn and Venus and the North Node in Pisces, which speaks to that all quite directly. So during this conjunction of the North Node with Venus, there's a potential then for another cultural moment to arise that resonates kind of similarly to the major Kendrick Lamar Super Bowl performance that really resonated with a lot of people back when we had the last Venus conjunction to the North Node. So we could definitely see something like that playing out during this time. And so this moment really invites us to observe and engage with the energies as they unfold and shaping intentionally the paths forward with our relationship. So possibly taking some time out to really rethink how we want to do this going forward, because there's a wonderful opportunity to have a major karmic directional shift if we're unhappy in the way that relationships have gone up to this point. So during this week, we also then have on the 4th of April, both Mars sextile Uranus goes exact and Saturn sextile Uranus goes exact. And we also then have Mars and Saturn in a trine to each other. That will go exact tomorrow on the 5th of April. But this is about as exact as you can get. They're all at 24 degrees at this point, and it's a bit of a trip to me. That's why I've been mentioning it quite a bit. So this could simply indicate a difficult change. We're dealing with both malefics here plus Uranus. So this is about our energy, the structures in which we are functioning, the institutionalized, this is how we do it kind of attitudes that we personally carry, but also that we encounter from governments, from the various types of institutions, our workplaces, and so forth, that we also wind up encountering in the world. It's those kinds of rules and boundaries, our own sense of drive and passion with Mars, and then Uranus being a major wild card and indicating a significant shift here. The fact that all of this is going exact and it's coming in on that Uranus point indicates a huge change here. So this could simply indicate a kind of a difficult change that takes some adjustment for sure. But on the other hand, it could really repurpose and reorient, realign, and rearrange some structures affecting action and the possibility of action, military, police institutions, any sort of institutions of force, governments and corporations. So, on a personal level, though, this enables us to make some very likely overdue changes with regard to our action. So, feeling a lot less than confined in our action, with Saturn really giving the go ahead to Mars here as well. So we may be presented with new opportunities or new ways of considering what it is that we're actively doing with our lives and with the options available to us. So we could witness a rearrangement between bigger forces as well, or institutions that appears to signal some sort of a reinvigoration. Again, I really feel like Saturn here is recognizing that the grip needs to be loosened a bit in order to move forward effectively. And I do feel like that's how this is going to play out in a lot of cases. Now, not every institution is going to respond to this in the same way. And those which try to clamp down, those which try to rigidly refuse to change or adjust as necessary, those are probably going to face some pretty serious complications due to that because of the fact that Mars and Uranus are really not going to allow for that. If we look at this just archetypally, Saturn's really going to have to be the one here to give. And so the pressure that Mars and Uranus brings to the table is very likely to wind up overpowering that Saturn. So I would expect blowback if there's not flexibility within institutions. And of course, this winds up pointing to a tension between then the way that things have been done versus the way that things can be forced to change. Institutional practices, particularly those entrenched in tradition, will probably struggle to hold out against the pressures of Mars and Uranus, especially as the need for change, just pragmatically, winds up intensifying over this time. So, of course, I've previously mentioned that this could signal some disasters, accidents, breakdowns, power issues, a kind of severing or a split within certain institutions, and especially in matters related to electricity, infrastructure, technology. So Saturn, as a traditional ruler of Aquarius, it does rule those grids and systems, society, and the structures that hold our connections together. That's one of the major things that Saturn rules. And so if there's an attempt to control those networks too rigidly, it seems unlikely to succeed in the long term with Uranus at the apex of this minor grand trine. Now, however, there could be different ways of managing these systems which are introduced, potentially reorienting even our own personal practices when it comes to structures through which we enact change. So there's something very communal about this aspect pattern to me because it's in the signs of Pisces, Cancer, and Taurus. It's not altogether like grounded or earthy, but it's also not remotely just an ideological thing. There is something material to both water and earth. Even though water requires some flexibility, I really feel like there's something about this that relates to care and community. And so I think that that's where a lot of that is going to wind up playing out. And of course, this is also a bit traditional. It could even be a bit backward looking, and not just ideologically, but nostalgically as well. So that's something that we can keep our eyes open for as trademarks of this particular aspect pattern playing out. So if there's a breakdown in a network, what I think is kind of interesting is people may wind up then connecting with their neighbors and communities and relying on then local relationships to structure their actions and to sustain meanwhile. Just to take a moment to tell a little personal anecdote, I found it so interesting. There was, it may have been a storm that was nearby, but didn't affect my neighborhood specifically. But there was a prolonged power outage last summer here. And what blew me away about it was that, of course, therefore, everyone lost their regular internet connection and the ability to like watch TV and things like that. And so immediately everyone wound up in, I live in an apartment complex, and we all wound up going outside and talking to each other and like updating each other on what was going on with the power outage and wound up having like conversations and things like this about unrelated stuff. And it was just really cool because we don't really, especially in apartments and stuff like that, where people are coming and going and so forth. I don't really feel like my experience has been one of people really talking as much as we used to with our neighbors and setting aside time like in the evening to just be outside and talk to each other and so forth. So we could definitely see certain things like that kind of then bringing that interesting little experience and lesson that I received last year then to more and more people as well, or that we received here. So on the next day, on the 5th, we get the perfection of the Mars trine to Saturn. And as I've said before, this does suggest some sort of authorization of force, agreement, and support between structures and then active or enforcement parties, especially martial action-driven forces. So on a personal level, as again, I've been saying for a little while, kind of like this. The alignment allows us to synchronize our actions and our plans, empowering us to basically make the changes necessary that wind up creating an alignment between our plans and then our dynamic productive efforts and bringing those into alignment with each other. So I really like it on a personal level. It seems very willful, but not in a way, these ones at least, that is super explosive. So there's likely an element of compassion and nurturing embedded in this process between these two due to the influence of Cancer and Pisces involved here. And this creates a pretty nurturing dynamic where we can pursue our goals and initiate meaningful changes in our lives, in our connections, in our communities, in our relationships, and foster a sort of space where then a greater transformation can occur with regard to, again, those long-term plans. Like I feel like, especially recently, where we've been up in the air and like awaiting news and trying to take the social temperature and so forth, that there's a lot of stuff that's been backburnered in a way that, when I connect with people and everything, people do seem pretty stressed out. And I feel like if we are able to take a step back during this time and focus on our homes and focus on our relationships and our communities and understanding that we do have a long-term safety and security in those areas, and how can we make them more nurturing and comfortable for ourselves in order to foster the best action of ourselves, then moving forward. I think that would be a really great action for us to take under this influence, because it's likely to work out basically under this influence. So this really encourages us to take action on our own behalf, and yet in alignment with a social value that we deeply resonate with or care about, rather than simply acting to maintain the status quo or to do so in a relatively defensive or overly like material security oriented kind of a way. So let's go ahead and move forward here. So for the second week of April, we have the Sun sextile to Jupiter on the 6th, as well as Venus trine to Mars on the 6th. And so I see this as a very strangely lovely day in the mix here. I really like this. Our energy, spirits, hopes, optimism should really be quite high. and making us feel empowered to take, again, an active role in our own lives. So we'll likely feel more comfortable standing out socially and expressively during this time. And the agreement between Venus and Mars here in water signs brings a sense of comfort and nurturing, encouraging us to take an active role, again, in caring for ourselves and others, and especially on an emotional and a spiritual level. So this supportive energy really fosters a sense of like gratitude of and around our relationships, and a sense of ease as well, allowing us to kind of lean into and melt into a more nurturing, supportive, um, thoughtful, reflective state during this time, and yet to still have a social, energetic spark to us while we feel that way. So we're likely to feel very comfortable with where we are, and quite confident then in our ability to move forward in the direction that we're trying to as well. And so this would be a really wonderful day to socialize and connect with other people, and to feel good about those in our lives and ourselves, and therefore be able to support others through a sense of self-assuredness and inner stability, on the 6th of April. So I really like that. Now, on the next day, Mercury will station direct, and we are starting then, very, very much starting. We still have a little way to go here, but there's complications that are going to be coming up for Mercury. But basically, we're starting to feel a bit more confident in making decisions. And this clarity really increases then even more so when Mercury rather moves then into Aries. It's been in Pisces where it's in its detriment and its fall. And now it's going to be moving into a much more self-assured space, and a space that is less liable to daydreaming or losing focus, or the other complications of taking too broad of a perspective that Mercury is not completely comfortable with in Pisces there. So our ability, of course, Mercury's currently retrograde, so please be patient with me as I stumble over my words throughout this whole thing. But once it goes direct, then our ability to speak more assuredly and directly is also strengthening, and that's allowing us to express ourselves then with greater confidence. And Mercury direct should then also allow us, I think this is also really speaking to the state of being kind of held up that we've been experiencing quite a bit recently. Mercury direct should then allow us to make decisions with a more complete understanding of situations and circumstances than we had back in March. So our thought processes, our communication, our connections with others, the technology around us, any sort of travel or transportation that we're experiencing should begin to clear up. And that, with that in mind, we have Mercury still navigating a directional shift during this time. And during this past month, I've been thinking about all of the aviation issues that we've been having recently. And I was feeling as though it might actually have, and I don't love this, but it may actually have something to do with the fact that Uranus, still in Taurus, but on the day when the accident started happening, so the 29th of January there, when there was the major accident that seemed to spur off or kick off a whole set of weird aviation issues, the one in the DC area. So Uranus on that day stationed direct in Taurus, but what's different now about the directional shift is that it's now moving toward Gemini. It's not going to stop now until it reaches and moves into Gemini. It will then retrograde back into Taurus, but it's headed straight in that direction. So it is in an area of the sky that has, and it's moving assuredly toward a part of the sky that is governed by Mercury, which has to do then with aviation and transportation, and also networks and again, our communications and things like this. So I think we're going to be seeing a lot more of that. I don't like that it really seemed to be because it's moving toward Gemini now. But I think this is something that we're going to continue to see in the years to come, with Uranus moving into Gemini and staying there for about 7 years. But right now, despite the fact that Mercury is going direct, we could definitely still see transportation issues because of the fact that, and even possibly much more so around this period of time, with Mercury stationing to go direct and with Uranus still moving then very much toward Gemini, closer and closer. So this means, of course, there's still potential for travel and technology disruptions that are going to arise somewhat unexpectedly for the coming like 7 years. It's going to feel at times when Mercury's not retrograde like it is, because Mercury is hosting Uranus for that whole time. So it's something we're likely to witness more frequently as Uranus continues on the trajectory that it's on now. So with that said, then also on the 7th, we have Venus conjunct to Saturn. This is retrograde, and we again will have Venus conjoin Saturn in Pisces on the 25th of March as well. So with Venus conjunct to Saturn in Pisces, we're able to take practical steps toward, again, a greater sense of security and connection. However, we may find ourselves torn between the transactional nature of certain relationships and the nurturing or spiritual kind of nature of Pisces itself. So there may be a bit of a contradiction there that we may pick up on subconsciously and find ourselves a little bit uncomfortable with. And this isn't even just about physical or material exchange. We could even become a little bit transactional on an energetic or spiritual, like nourishment kind of sense in our relationships. So how do our relationships make us feel? How do we make other people feel? Is that balanced? Are we getting something out of that right now? It's probably going to be a bit of an uncomfortable question, but it's one that we're definitely going to be grappling with as this Venus approaches Saturn a couple times. So this is a favorable time to bring aesthetic beauty into form and to set very clear expectations and boundaries within relationships. Also, when it comes to previously set boundaries, we may see ourselves reevaluating that with Venus in retrograde, especially again regarding the energy that we absorb from others and the energy that we wind up giving in return. So we may even wind up starting to ask ourselves questions about, do we want to maintain some of the relationships that we're in? And are these relationships beyond, are they, what's the word that I'm looking for, like beneficial to us? Beyond that, are they still enjoyable? And have they perhaps become a bit superfluous as connections? Because really the connections that we're wanting to maintain are mutually beneficial, mutually harmonious, and making both or several parties feel supported or again benefited by that. If that's not the case, we may be maintaining some superfluous relationships, which could be a drain both on us and the other people involved, you know? So on a deeper level, this transit, though, is going to be asking us how to structure and define our spiritual connection as well, and our connection with what lies beyond the veil. Venus in Pisces really speaks to me about those spiritual relationships, the relationship with, say, the universe or any sort of spirit energies that you may identify with. It highlights those connections. And so we could be seeing those come more into form of, like, if you are someone that has inclined toward like ritual or taking time out to connect spiritually, you may be trying to bring that more into your daily life and routine. If that hasn't been something that you've been doing, you may be wanting to bring that in around this time as well. And this can help with that quite a bit. So Venus in this position, in conjunction with Saturn in Pisces, it carries with it a sort of majestic, untouchable kind of quality to it that's slightly off limits again. So, under this influence, it's going to be important that we limit our time again with people who do not align with our sense of self, our sense of connection, of spirituality, values, of morals, of compassion, or even empathy. And in the global sphere or out in the world, one thing that always concerns me about these kinds of connections is that diplomacy or aid could wind up facing some restrictions or delays with this, potentially due to a crisis that hinders a quick response. And there may be even a curtailment of support for something, possibly even related to women and children. I'm hoping that this is not the case, but this does bring up vibes of what happened, for instance, in North Carolina recently and what's going on in Gaza, where there's a tragedy that is very heart-wrenching for a lot of us, and yet it seems impossible to help it on the timetable that we really want to. In the one case, because there's an institutional blockage, which is insane. But on the other level of the crisis itself hindering the aid where the roads were taken out. And so assistance couldn't be gotten to the people who were affected by those storms. So I hope we don't see something like that, but I wouldn't be surprised. Now, on the next day, then, on the 8th of April here, we have Uranus then sextiling, or rather Venus then sextiling Uranus, and that will also come back again on the 20th. So what we have here is something interesting. With Venus going retrograde, it's conjoining Saturn, which has just moved beyond the connection with Uranus. Then Venus will connect with Uranus, and then as Venus goes direct, it'll connect again with Uranus and then again with Saturn and so on. So with Venus sextile Uranus, we could see at this point in the first week or later in the month, around the third week or fourth of April, a diplomatic or relational breakthrough. And this could also wind up representing for us personally pleasant changes that bring a sense of ease and harmony and novelty and a kind of being able to settle in comfortably to something that's novel, which I think is going to be kind of cool considering we're dealing with Pisces and Taurus here. Also, then on the same day, we have Mars trine to the North Node. I don't think this is going to be the hugest deal, but I did notice that the last time that we had this one, there was some new developments within some conflicts and potentially shifting then the dynamics of a conflict with Mars trine to the North Node and then sextile to the South Node, of course. So this is bringing us up very close to the full moon in Libra at this point, but I did want to just briefly mention as well that we will have the Sun conjunct to Chiron on the 12th of April as well. And so this is a time that could bring to light some sore spots or some patterns or anxieties or wounds that maybe we have tried to look away from that are rooted in a sense of lack or a loss, possibly even some inhibitions that we have. And it can even bring to light some health concerns that need attention during this time. And that could be even spiritual or even like egoic health in Aries of, again, where we inhibit ourselves, where we may feel kind of overly shy in a way that's not really beneficial to us or even really comfortable with us. So there could also then be teachable moments in this time, offering valuable lessons related to our growth throughout our lives. And at the same time, there could be challenges for leadership, testing the ability of those leaders to navigate through some of these issues, which we may even be seeing on a societal level around who's capable of taking action and who's not. And if there are any wounds in any given societies around issues like that, then they're likely to be coming up around this time. So let's go ahead and move toward the full moon in Libra, which is taking place on the 12th of April at 8:21 p.m. in the Eastern Daylight Savings time zone in the US. It's going to be taking place on the 13th in Europe. So just it's that night across the Atlantic, and then of course other times in other places. But it's taking place at 23 degrees of Libra. So firstly, with this full moon in Libra, Venus, the ruler of Libra, is just about to station direct and move forward. And so Venus is really tightly conjoined with Saturn here. So we have both the ruler and the exaltation ruler of Libra bound up together in Pisces. So Venus is exalted in Pisces and Saturn's doing okay there. It's not in a debilitated state at this point. And so while Venus has been kind of tested through this whole retrograde phase, which took it from the place of its own detriment in Aries, where it doesn't really behave in a standard Venus way, all the way up to its exaltation in Pisces, it's then pushed it past Neptune and past the North Node and Saturn here. It's come into a supportive contact with Uranus. It's been through a lot, like I said in the beginning. It's having a ton of aspects that it's going through while it itself is doing this kind of reevaluation and purging process of the retrograde. And it's about to go direct. I believe it's the day after this full moon, or maybe several hours after this full moon. So it's been tested, but I'm very confident that a Venus, which is going back into Pisces from Aries, will have persevered through this and is now then able to really contribute to agreements, hopefully not aggrievements, but probably as well, agreements, and paving the way toward a greater sense of stability with its connection then to Saturn here. And both of those really having something to say about Libra, because Saturn exalts in Libra as well. So to add then to this dynamic, Venus is stationing as well just prior to an aspect to Jupiter. Again, we had this happen very early in March, where Venus started to look like it was about to sextile Jupiter from Aries, and then it went retrograde and it didn't complete that aspect. Now Venus will be stationing just prior to creating a square aspect to Jupiter. And so that one also will not complete. And rather than what we're going to do is we're going to have that Venus moving direct. And if I remember correctly, we are going to get those sextiles complete finally in June. But this can definitely bring a major sense of delayed gratification. So there may be certain things that feel like, okay, they're going in the right direction, and we may think that we're going to get a quick result on it. We may not actually get full like blossoming of what it is that really seems to be grounded in a harmonious and wonderful way with this transit of Venus until later. So we will probably have to wait for some of the benefits here. But with Saturn's influence, we may start to see some of Saturn's more positive effects now that we have a full moon in it, the sign of its exaltation, plus it's in connection with a very strong Venus, much more strong in this placement than Saturn is. And so this is going to be encouraging discipline, structure, long-term planning, all of which are really essential as we navigate the energies of a full moon, which is also kind of calling into question a lot of where we're at with something which is culminating at this point, and what of the structure is harmonious and sustainable with Libra here, and fair and reasonable in Libra, and maybe what's not. And that we can probably leave to the other side of this whole lunation cycle. So with Jupiter applying then now that square to Saturn, which has been building for many, many, many months now, it almost broke apart as Saturn has started to move on a little bit faster than Jupiter had, but they're going to be catching up with each other relatively soon as well. And that square is now closing in again. So with that square, there's a feeling of something that may have gotten out of hand or out of balance, and it needs to be brought back into balance. Again, a very pragmatic kind of energy here that's focused on sustainability of concerns and integrity. So that's something that we will really want to maintain is our own sense of integrity throughout this time. There's too much going on with the North Node, with Saturn, with Venus here, with these weird lunations that are getting hit up by Mars. The huge energy, the explosive energy that we're dealing with a little bit later in the month, maintaining our own integrity throughout all of this is going to be really important. So wherever chaos may have swept in, this is really about restoring order. This full moon in Libra here. So, on the other hand, not everything is going to be smooth sailing with this lunation. So there's a very noticeable T square to Mars here, which we could see being heightened frustration and conflict. So emotions may be running very high. Tensions may rise around this, especially in situations where people feel a need to take action. But with the moon here ruling Mars, Mars being in its fall and the moon ruling that Mars from the position of Mars's detriment, diplomacy and emotional intelligence will play a significant role. And while there may be a flare-up of an impulsive or short-sighted conflict, it's unlikely to win out in the long run with these energies here. And so cooler heads and balanced approaches will ultimately prevail here. So possibly not in the short term. It may look like something else is in an exciting way kind of winning out, and maybe that's a bit stressful or whatnot. But ultimately, long term, the seeds that are sown here is of Mars kind of getting its rear ended handed to it a bit. So I would not be on the Mars side of this equation here. There's too much that's leaning in the other direction. So on a larger scale, this alignment could bring up matters of diplomacy, particularly in situations regarding war or conflict, and the tension from the Mars T square could create a sense of urgency during this time, but the steadying influence of Venus and Saturn as well suggests that a solution can be found by seeking balance and compromise here. So basically, in summary, the Libra full moon here, it's inviting us to bring a sense of harmony to situations that feel outside of our control. And tensions may be high during this period of time. Challenges may arise, but the steady energy of Venus is where we should really be focused right now. And the balancing influence of Jupiter and Saturn definitely shows us that diplomacy, patience, careful decision making is going to lead the way toward a more stable future situation for ourselves. And this is going to definitely wind up playing into the coming few months as we have that square where the restrictive boundary making energy of Saturn conflicts with in a very dialectical way, which is going to need to be resolved. And these two will work together to resolve something for sure. The expansive and benefic, yeah, kind of agreement oriented, yes, and oriented energy of Jupiter. So they are needing to come into alignment with each other, and they both certainly will. But it's going to take a few months. And in the meantime, the extent to which we can really focus on an energy of, okay, Jupiter and Saturn and Venus here, um, playing together relatively nicely, even though there's a square. In addition to Venus being exalted and ruling that Libra full moon and the Taurus new moon, both Venus and Saturn are actually in the domicile of Jupiter. So this is working out. It's just that it's going to feel kind of intense when we're dealing with all of this in the short term. So with all of that said, let's go ahead and move on to the third week of April, where on the 13th, we now have Venus direct, and we're able to start to move forward again in relationships creatively with a clearer understanding of what we like and what we want. And that's just going to continue to build as we get Venus then moving again into Aries and individualizing this a little bit more for us as well. Now, also, I don't have it marked here, but I do know that around this period of time as well, that there is a pretty close sextile between Saturn and Uranus still, and the sun will be at the midpoint of that, creating semi-sextiles to both of them. So leadership may feel pulled in different directions during this time, leading to potential breakdowns with Uranus involved here. And this may bring into question the integrity or authority or legitimacy of certain leaders or other parties that are involved in any sort of negotiations. That is just something that I wanted to note here because it stood out to me. So now on the 14th of April, we have the conjunction of Saturn with the North Node in Pisces, and we may be then facing limitations and realities during this time that feel like they are blocking future development and progress. This is still a huge, big work in progress that I've been talking about throughout the whole beginning of this video. So this could bring up then a fear of the future that is getting pretty sharp during this time, and a strong sense of needing to rise to a critical moment in the unfolding of events in our life, or even in the unfolding of history, broadly speaking. I feel like there's repeated themes here of a false sense of urgency right now, whereas a lot of the solutions I think are in patience, even though this conjunction of Saturn and the North Node may bring up some sort of a difficulty that looks like it needs an immediate response. So there could be a difficult event that challenges many, and possibly something in the world that causes upset. And under an influence like this in Pisces, we are then, with this Saturn North Node in Pisces, we're likely to then see some developments in that kind of anti-empathy fad and the consequences of this. So the thing with Saturn conjoining the North Node is we are facing the kind of karmic repercussions for our actions and this could trace back quite a bit for us. But this also then means that we're experiencing a karmic clearing of the old while we are starting then to plant the seeds of new beginnings, but that then also speaks to a future potential karma for us. So again, integrity is what I'm going to be preaching throughout this video. We might witness ongoing developments related to the upcoming Saturn-Neptune conjunction that I'm going to be speaking really directly to quite soon. And this could lead to a rejection of a certain narrative or a challenge to structures in the world that seem very dominant right now. So this could be a very critical moment for institutions, for governments, for corporations, for authorities, really of all kinds. And we could then see during this time the authorization of something significant and that is carrying future karmic consequences. So on a personal level, though, with this karmic clearing, there's a chance to reset and act with integrity as we basically navigate this influence. So I think it's pretty cool. All this stuff has been happening pretty strong in my chart, so I've been a bit like tentative about it, but I think it's good. I think we can have a little bit of confidence about this. So then what we have on the 16th of April, Mercury will be moving into Aries. This happened last month. So remember, Mercury went out to about 10 degrees of Aries and then started going retrograde. So we had this happen. I think actually it may have been a little bit more than a month ago that it first ingressed into Aries. But basically, there's again a shift toward a more forceful and direct communication style with clearer communications and less like beating around the bush, like I do as a Mercury in Pisces, where it's like, God, get to the point, you know? There's a lot less of that than for us, and I'm looking forward to that. This period also brings the ability to reason independently, then no longer relying on others to define matters. And so we'll see a quickness of wit arising, making it easier for us to think on our feet and respond to matters. So our thoughts then are sharper. We're able to receive better information once Mercury moves past Neptune, and especially once we are beyond the retrograde shadow. So again, a work in progress. We're not completely in the clear at this point, but it's getting better and better at this point. So for many, there's no longer then a need to wait to make decisions. And this was likely the case for some time with Mercury retrograde near Neptune in Pisces. There's a greater sense of certainty emerging now that it's moving back into Aries there. But for the short term, then immediately after this, on the 17th, we're getting something very interesting. When Mercury went into Pisces retrograde in March, what it did was it ingressed into Pisces on the 29th or 30th and immediately conjoined Neptune at 29 degrees and 59 minutes, the very last minute of the entire zodiac. It conjoined with Neptune in Pisces. Neptune then, a few hours later, went into Aries. And now that Mercury has gone direct and is ingressing into Aries. Now, what we're getting is a conjunction of Mercury direct to Neptune in Aries. So this energy is different, and it's probably going to be resolving things in a way that we may not have been fully in tune with just a couple of weeks ago. But basically, there is still likely a tendency to be capable, very capable of confusing oneself rather than being deceived from the outside now that we're dealing with Aries. So despite the fact that we think that we're very right and that we think that we're so sure of ourselves in this moment, we still are lacking clarity and logical reasoning right now, especially when it comes to any sort of conflict. And misunderstandings are going to be quite common. So people may speak even more forcefully than they realize, possibly without full consideration, accidentally. Speaking very forcefully is something that I could see playing out during this time. And the media could wind up misrepresenting narratives, especially regarding war. I have chosen not to do a retrospective on March this time. Let me know if you want for us to. There were definitely the things that were mentioned definitely came to be, but I'm not sure if you guys are really interested in that or just want to like kind of figure that out on your own that okay, the things that we were expecting happened. But one of them in particular that I do want to mention here, because we're probably going to see developments around it, is that I was mentioning because of this connection of Mercury with Neptune, and then also the sextile that Mercury has been throwing out a couple times to Pluto during this whole transition, plus the whole Aries, Pisces kind of combination that we're also dealing with this. I was thinking, one, there's going to be a leak. It's probably going to be accidental, but also I was feeling that there was a sort of a limited hangout aspect to whatever this was, where yes, there's a weird thing with communication and a slip, but I don't think even that the story that we're told is the full story will ultimately end up being the full story about that. I hope that makes sense. So I think that when it comes to the weird leak regarding the attacks on Yemen, where an Atlantic journalist was accidentally or whatever in a group chat with some government officials of the United States, I think that we may wind up hearing more about that probably as we get to this third conjunction now that we've had of Mercury and Neptune. So that's something that that I'll specifically call out. It's probably related to that story or what happened around that, the attacks on Yemen, why we're doing it, such and such regarding this. I think that this will wind up speaking to. Now, there's going to be also then a tendency with now Mercury moving direct into Aries, conjoining Neptune in Aries, a tendency to jump to conclusions based on faulty information and feeling, again, very sure of being right while ultimately being correct. So if you don't want to have to save face later, I would just kind of caution around that. But then what we have on the 18th is Mars moving into Leo. Finally, I've been so looking forward to this. Um, this is still part of the broader retrograde that we have been enduring for several months at this point, which pulled Mars so slowly back into Cancer. And it's now finally moving into Leo. Now, this brings a whole different can of worms that we're going to be dealing with for a few weeks here as we get again the third and final opposition to Pluto and the square to the sun and the square to dark moon Lilith, if that's something that you take into consideration too. But the energy levels are going to be increasing, the enthusiasm and excitement levels are going to be increasing. So I am just glad that we're getting out of this really long Mars and Cancer period of time. So we're going to be feeling more confident for sure, and more extroverted in our action, more lighthearted especially after we clear the shadow, and this Mars is not feeling quite so aggravated as it's going to for a little while here. So. Then on the 19th, we get the sun moving into Taurus. So again, seeking a more grounded sense of comfort and harmony in the direction that we're going in life. But again, the T square to Mars and Pluto is brewing. So we're not really going to be getting that right now until again, both of these inner planets, Sun and Mars, wind up finally clearing Pluto there and each other. So also then on the 19th, we have Mars trying to Neptune again. This also happened last year. And there is a strong sense then of independent and individual creativity supported by this. And some people, though, will be able to very like charismatically delude themselves and others under this influence. So that is something that I would watch out for. While energetically feeling quite good, people may also then feel somewhat scattered in terms of the actions that are being taken and the purpose for them, the vision. The vision may be really unclear, despite probably because it's a new vision with Neptune very new in Aries. The last times that we had the two first trines between Mars and Neptune were both Pisces, Cancer. So they were dealing with a completely different kind of a situation and a different type of a vision. We may be feeling on some level more sure of that vision, but again, it's still new. So we may not be completely clear on how do we take action toward this because it's just a whole new situation. So there may be a lack of a complete understanding of what one should be focusing on. And there may even be a desire to go with the flow during this time. I would actually really encourage that because of the fact that we're dealing with this crazy opposition that's starting to build up too. And actually, what that's representing is if you look at Mars and Neptune and Pluto in this chart, what you'll see is there's an opposition between Mars and Pluto, but there's a release point of a trine from Mars to Pluto and a sextile I'm sorry, a trine from Mars to Neptune and a sextile that's between Neptune and Pluto. And if you don't know this, that's a sextile that's been going on since the 1940s, which I just think is very cool. We're going to have that same sextile between those two continuing well into the 2030s, but it is there. So Neptune is a release point for the tension of Mars and Pluto. So we could use it as a probably not going to want to chill, but there can be a relatively easygoing nature to a trine between Mars and Neptune. So any way that we can tap into that, I would highly, highly recommend it to just chill and just go with the flow as much as we can and just allow for the energy that we have and the excitement that we have to be what it is and to not need to be overtly directed to the point that we feel a sort of tension building up in ourselves or with others. So doing whatever feels very personally satisfying without focusing on any sort of conflict with other people, I think is going to be great during this time. However, of course, like I was alluding to, there is a risk of going overboard on excitement during this time. And also, I definitely want to emphasize be very cautious with substances under this influence. It's a new energy. We're not used to Neptune in Aries, and with Mars tapping into it in this way, I feel like there's going to be some people going overboard. So then, therefore, also be careful on the road and anywhere else that you may incidentally wind up running into people who themselves are a little bit not in the right state of mind here. So let's go ahead and then look at the Mercury sextile to Pluto, which is going to be taking place on the 20th of April. And this one also happened last month, as I said. So this is a time of profound insights and transformative conversations. Transformative conversation, I mean, hopefully not over signal where there's people that you don't expect to be in there. There's a strong ability under this influence to tap into hidden information. Probably not that you're going to be added to a secret chat, but that certainly has happened to someone under this influence. So again, definitely speaking to this kind of an energy that now we can kind of look at as, okay, that's a tangible thing that we can now see. So this is allowing us also to conduct effective research and communicate then about deeper topics, and definitely expect to see a lot of conversation around power dynamics, transformations, even death, big like life-changing themes that are likely to come to the forefront and be a topic of discussion around this period of time. Also, I should mention that Venus is conjoined to the North Node again on the 20th. We already talked about that. And Venus is now again sextile to Uranus, and we already discussed that. So I won't go into that, but just it's pretty much the same thing as I mentioned before. Now, let's go ahead and move to the fourth week of April. And so on the 21st of April, we have the Sun perfecting the square to Mars. And this is part of a broader pattern that I'm going to be showing you between Sun, Mars, Pluto, and also then Jupiter in a kind of under the radar way. So this is part of a broader pattern, and this is another indication of conflicts of ego, similar to what we see with the Sun square Pluto aspect that we'll also talk about in a moment here. So in situations like this, we can see some people being quite malignant, acting out in very unhealthy and destructive ways. I'm concerned about fires with this, as well as explosive public confrontations that are very likely under this, with some powerful figures coming under challenge or something about them being brought to light with this. So this could cause harm to leaders, even outright attacks. And on a personal level, there may and I hope this is not the case, there may be some feelings of self-hatred under this influence. We have the sun getting kind of hated on here by Pluto and Mars. So I'm hoping we're not feeling that in a personal way, because that's a little bit yucky of a feeling. So the positive aspect, though, of this is that those feelings are coming to light. So we can look at them, we can deal with them at that point in the sense of like we can pursue some level of personal growth of looking those things really in the eye and looking our own shadow really in the eye and addressing it for what it is. Now, of course, that's not always comfortable, but it can be very, very liberating. So on the other hand, people who are not really tuned into their own shadow or can't handle that may act very wildly, and they may react or act in extreme ways to conflicts, both within themselves and with society. So this disalignment that we'll feel internally and with others could become incredibly explosive. Now, with Jupiter involved, I will show you that as well here. And you can see then here how this alignment is building up throughout week 4 and 5, and it includes the Sun early in Taurus, Mars early in Leo, Pluto early in Aquarius, and then Jupiter is creating aspects also to each one of these placements, which is not a sign-based uh, aspect, but it's angle-based alignments that it's creating, where it's casting semi-squares, which are tense and very uncomfortable, aspects to the Sun and to Mars here, which you can see with the dotted lines. And then the dashed line is a sesquiquadrate or a sesquisquare that Jupiter is forming to Pluto. I do also want to point out that sesquiquadrate is building slowly. That's happening quite a bit throughout the whole broader month. I don't have the exact dates on it, but it's going to be a fuzzy thing that is just kind of a background noise that really indicates a degree of power blowing back, of major going to extremes, going way overboard with what's the word that I'm looking for? Coercion and malignancy, and like really getting heightened, getting hyped in that. And so I'm very uncomfortable with the fact that that is also going on this month. But like I said, with Jupiter involved, there's a chance that some people's delusions of grandeur are also leading them to destroy their fortunes or privileges, or to throw that away. And Jupiter then could feed into that reckless behavior. So again, unhealthy people, they're going to be showing their true colors during this influence, and it's really crucial to avoid those people, and especially to avoid arguments or conflicts with them, because it's unlikely to go well for anyone involved. I think that what the sun is really doing here, for one thing, it's putting us a bit in conflict with ourselves. We're all going to be dealing with that to some extent or another. But it's also bringing all of this to light for us. And so it could really be pointing out people in our lives that have been going under the radar in terms of how toxic they are. So I think that that's good, but I would not argue with them. So, that's something that we should definitely keep in mind here. So now let's look at this from the perspective of just Sun square to Pluto as part of this broader pattern. So we're seeing a kind of conflictual power dynamics in public view here with the sun involved, with attempts to control, manipulate, or undermine leaders or people in positions of power. And we're also likely to see that kind of energy coming from those leaders as well. And this could really unearth something significant. So grandiosity, narcissism, gaslighting, and other underhanded manipulative tactics could be at play throughout this process. Again, on a personal level, this could be a major challenge to the ego, the self, one's sense of purpose, and we may be called to confront difficult patterns or other shadow aspects of ourselves. For those who don't, these unhealthy patterns are likely to become then visible to others. If you're not willing to see it, other people are going to wind up seeing it. So there could be then a conflict between light and dark, warmth and coldness. So, like nurturing versus coldness, and how that kind of plays out in weird ways. Even life and death, or ego versus transformation and ego death with the Sun and Pluto here. There may be then an opportunity to point out something malignant or harmful, but again, it's like the number one recommendation that you get from people when you first learn about narcissism and things like that, that the number one rule of knowing about someone's narcissism is to never tell them that you know. It's kind of like that. I wouldn't bring it up. It's not the time. You're going to get pushback, and it's too explosive right now for it to really turn out as a win-lose. Conflict right now is a lose-lose. So I would just avoid it entirely. Again, on a personal level, this energy can be channeled as an extraordinary amount of willpower and toward a specific goal in mind. So, especially something that you take a lot of pride in. However, this is going to require keeping that balance, that integrity in mind that we've been trying to focus on throughout this month, because everything is very, very out of balance right now as these energies start to build up. Also, we are getting the third and final conjunction between Venus and Saturn, then on the 25th, if I didn't just say that like 2 seconds ago. Thank you, Mercury retrograde. But I talked about that before, so I won't delineate that again, but that's on the 25th. So then finally, we have the new moon in Taurus playing out on the 27th of April, and that's going to be at 3:30 on the east coast of the US. So adjust to your own time zone. And this is going to be taking place at about 7 degrees of Taurus. And to begin with, this new moon is going to be highlighting a deep sense of discomfort, just straight up. You can look at it right there. It's at the apex of the opposition between Mars and Pluto. I wish that I could sugarcoat this, but I can't. It may feel like we're under immense pressure due to forces beyond our control, and this is due to that T squared between the new moon, Mars and Pluto, which is creating an intense push and pull of conflict and power struggles, possibly even with ourselves. So in this environment, there's a growing need then to assert some mediation, to assert some balance over ourselves. And as many of us are going to be feeling the increasing desire to move beyond unnecessary conflict and manipulation, uh, that is going to need to be addressed for ourselves as well. What's interesting about this is the sun and the moon are technically beyond that T square. It's just that it's still quite sharp. So we definitely are wanting to and are moving beyond that now, but it's still so potent there. The intensity of Mars opposite to Pluto is adding to all of this tension that we're starting to feel release, but possibly sharpened a bit just during this new moon again too, just because of the configuration and the energies involved. So there's an opportunity here to break free from power games and transform the way that we handle these situations, but again, through the experience of it. So adding another layer to this dynamic is Venus, the ruler of Taurus. And right now, Venus is void of course, and it's about to shift from exaltation into detriment. So, void of course means that there's no more aspects that are going to be made by Venus until it changes signs. And she's also about to take a step down, to put it in these kind of visible terms, from her exaltation in Pisces all the way down to her detriment in Aries. So there's even a tension bound up within the ruler of this lunation that I think we're going to be feeling this on a weird level of there's just certain things that are around right now that we don't like. And I think that part of the reason why it's coming to us like so sharply is to allow for ourselves to give ourselves permission to tap out, to unplug from those things to the extent that we can, because it's going to be so clear that this isn't really what we're interested in or wanting. Basically, this suggests that what we've been working on in our relationships in terms of our values or in terms of diplomacy, it's just unlikely to be sustainable going forward. So there's a redirect here. And interestingly, Venus is sitting at the apex right now then of a minor grand trine between Pluto and Uranus, and that is signaling a deeper transformation in how we approach relationships and negotiation. And so this aspect suggests that diplomacy and relationships, the way that they've been handled, is shifting right now, both personally and on a societal level. So this transformation is really likely it's a response to the lingering power dynamic stirred up by Mars and Pluto's ongoing opposition. Venus is very aware of that because she's hosting the sun and the moon, which are in an apex to it. So she's got a full view of it, both from her sextile to Pluto and trine to Mars, but then also from her rulership over this lunation. So what's happening here feels much bigger than what we've anticipated. And there's an undercurrent then of energy pushing us to redefine the narratives we engage in our relationships, and not just in our own personal lives, but collectively. It's as if there is something in the ether which is really inviting us to rewrite the scripts we follow and to challenge outdated power structures, and then inviting us also to explore new ways of relating to each other. So another notable theme here with this new moon is the potential for significant statements or private shifts even among women and people in general. So we may see discussion for sure of women coming up. And there's a palpable sense here, certainly for women, but I think again also people in general, especially good people, um, there's a palpable sense then of being fed up among people and a desire to no longer have to clean up the messes left behind from others or to have to live with the fallout of the bad and immature and irresponsible choices of other people who are very conflictual and never really have to then see the consequences of their own actions, but rather it's others who have to endure that. So this frustration may culminate in currently quiet, but still rather powerful changes and something of like small ripples right now that have the potential to ultimately reshape collective narratives over time. So basically, in summary, this new moon in Taurus is asking us to sit with the discomfort that we're experiencing with this. I sadly can almost guarantee that there's some sort of a kind of contradiction in our energy that we're feeling, and acknowledge where change is needed. And while it may feel like we are walking a bit of a tightrope between conflict and transformation, this moment really offers us the opportunity to redefine how we engage with others and how we assert our values. So it looks to me quite dynamic and ultimately very productive. But again, both of the lunations this month don't look to me to be particularly comfortable. So that is something that we will need to keep in mind. So finally, coming to the fifth week of April, on the 27th of April, we have the completion, the exactitude of the final Mars opposition to Pluto, which again is part of the broader pattern that we're seeing play out between primarily Sun, Mars, and Pluto this month, but then also Jupiter as well. And this is the second of the oppositions that we're seeing between Leo and Aquarius. This also took place in Cancer and Capricorn last year. So this influence can definitely indicate attacks, war, power conflicts, and the clash between Pluto's coercion and Mars's force. So we could even see this play out again on grids or networks or communities. We may even see like character assassination and things like that playing out with this with Mars and Leo, then speaking more to a potential like solar individual. That would look to me like a character assassination kind of an energy. So it will most act in people who are already unwell, leading them to create potentially explosive situations. So again, pretty much this whole month, my best advice would be if you know someone is not well, not right, you know, um, I would avoid them during this time. It's unlikely to be very good. So again, this is the second of the oppositions from Leo to Aquarius. The first one was in early January, and we had another one that was just before the election in Cancer and Capricorn, but we'll mention that in a second too. The election in the US. This also then highlights a dialectical conflict against power. But we have to keep in mind that there's different kinds of power. So there's force here taken against powerful parties, whether that power is in numbers or is hierarchical. So think of like labor versus oligarchs and the fact that on either sides of those equation, there is a power that the other doesn't have. And that could come to a head in some way. And there is also a potential then for malignancy and extreme coercion to find its way into that sort of a conflict. So I would expect to see crime, hatred, anger, potentially even revolt under this. And people may be taking extra legal actions during this time. Both of these indicate criminality. So pushing the boundaries of what's even considered acceptable, possibly on a social or moral level, beyond the legal, constraints. So there could be some grotesque situations, but hopefully what we can avoid here would be even like underground fires or highly explosive attacks, either from or to nations. And there's also the possibility then of a reaction under this influence to tech oligarchs, Pluto in Aquarius, with exposure and a powerful pushback against them. So again, let me pull us back actually to this broader configuration with Jupiter as well, and just speak to this broadly and what I expect from it. So again, this is playing into the first opposition that we had between Mars and Pluto before Mars went retrograde. And that one took place just before election day. So with the sun at the apex of this one, it could indicate some consequences or challenges to Trump and possibly related to the election or crisis point highlighted in the election chart could be fulfilling the promise of that chart around this period of time. So something that is indicated in that election chart could be fulfilled basically around this time for sure. And it could even become more clear and reaching a crisis point with this T-square. With the tense aspects to Jupiter involved here as well, again, the situation could be exacerbated. And I've been asking myself for some months now, knowing that this configuration was coming up, like, could a potential crisis that we see under this influence have something to do with the reason that Trump was elected? And I'm hoping that that's clear as to like what it is that I'm actually asking here. Like, is there something playing out possibly around this period of time, fulfilling the promise of one of the strongest aspects that we saw in that election chart, which spoke clearly to the election of Trump? Could this be part of the reason why it was him and not someone else? I don't know what the answer to that is, but I think that we may actually see something like that pretty clearly in this coming month toward the end. So that said, anywhere in the world, this may point to legal or ethical issues or raise questions around the plans set in motion by leaders are being undermined. And this could also indicate a critical point in the challenge to social order or legal order, and particularly within an administration. So there may be a challenge to the order of an administration itself, either from the outside or from the inside. And the plans that have been set forth by given administrations could be disrupted with this. And honestly, there's even a potential for violence or harm to health. So this could be related to a war or a health crisis, possibly with a leader or some other major negative aspect related to some administration out there. And again, this with solar figures, this could even be speaking to big like industry leaders or something like that. It doesn't just have to be government administrations. But all of these placements together could certainly point to some form of even martial law or a state of emergency declaration with Jupiter in detriment and Jupiter itself under intense pressure from these placements, that potentially then indicating rights being curtailed in some sense somewhere in the world, probably from a government. And again, none of this is specific to the U.S., but this opposition does echo the last U.S. election. So there's something kind of strange that is going on under this influence. And I don't know that I can say that I am looking forward to it. In fact, I'm quite confident that I can say that I'm not. So that said, coming back to week 5, we've covered the whole configuration at this point. So finally, all that we need to keep in mind is that at the very end of this month, then we finally have Venus moving into Aries on the 30th. Again, this also happened last month. We had Venus go into Aries and then it retrograded back into Pisces. So at this point, we will be equipped to make independent evaluations of what we like, what we find likable, what we find enjoyable or pleasurable, rather than simply going along with what is agreeable and harmonious, which is something Pisces tends to incline toward. So more of what do you like? What do you enjoy? What do you find pleasurable? At this point, I'd say we've gotten the bulk of the T-square nonsense, the explosive situation out of the way, right? If we've acted with integrity, if we've avoided a lot of that on a personal level, then I would say we can drop the shield of agreeability and harmoniousness as a means and an end in and of itself, as a an ability to guard against some of the more difficult energies that are going to be in the ether throughout this month. So now we can step back to ourselves and we can focus more again on what we like. So there's going to be a strong desire for independence emerging, along with a focus then on self-love and confidence throughout this time. So yeah, that is pretty much, I think, what I have for April on a broader level. So before we get into the sign by sign, because I know that when we're using timestamps, we tend to then jump out to our sign and then sign off. So before you do so, I would very much love to thank you for being here and for your support. And if you don't mind hitting the thumbs up button, I would greatly appreciate that. That helps to spread the video around, which helps the channel to grow. And yeah, if you enjoy content like this, I tend to cover cultural, geopolitical, social astrology, as well as doing like monthly forecasts and taking various significant transits through the houses and also looking at those from a mundane perspective. So, if that's something that you are interested in, do consider sticking around by subscribing as well. I would love to have you here. And finally, I would like to thank foremost the members of this channel who are supporting the channel in its growth. And so thank you so much to Angel Niblock, Patrick McKenney, Startlingly True, Deborah Keel-Levitt, Gary A., Stacy Bergener, Maria Cyril Hyro, Michelle Howell, JJ, Jody Z, C. Rezer, Anne Marie, Lynn Newman, Peace Out, Rachel Windholtz, Lisa S., Aya, and the Z-Man 1291. Thank you so, so much. Much love to you for your support. If you also would like to join memberships, then there's information in the description box below. It's a wonderful way to support the channel. And there's also information down there about personal readings if you would like one, which is also a wonderful support. And yeah, so thank you so much, everyone, for being here. And now let us jump into the sign by sign forecast for April. Okay, so for Aries, we have Neptune in your first house. Again, I've just covered this in a video, which I'm linking below, and I took this in depth through all the houses. So if you're more interested in that, then do check that out. But in summary, basically, this Neptune in your first house for the coming like 14 years is going to be bringing an etheric, dreamy, kind of expansive, optimistic energy to your sense of yourself, to your sense of how you connect with others, to your personality, basically. And it could, though, also introduce at different times some confusion or feeling like you're taking one path and then another when it comes to you and your personality and how you show up in the world. Even your motivations could become a bit unclear. And so this is something that's going to be starting around this time, but it's going to be a very long, drawn out process. Sometimes you're going to completely forget that Neptune is there, just because it's such a long, drawn out process. So I wouldn't stress too much about that. But if that dreamy kind of expansive, optimistic energy seems to be infusing your personality a lot more, that's going to be from Neptune there. So also then we have the Libra full moon will be taking place in your seventh house this month. And so there's a need to find balance between yourself and others when it comes to your own personal relationships. And Neptune will probably be playing into this because it's going to be causing some new considerations to need to be made by you about you. And that's naturally going to be bringing up some questions also when it comes to your relationships and your connections. And this may even then be playing into throughout this month with Mars in your fourth house and then into your fifth house. This could have a lot to do with family dynamics or experiences that you had when you were young, or a sense of needing to express something that's in you and bring that out into the world. Neptune is going to be working on that basically in overdrive here for a while. But I wouldn't be surprised to see that T square between the sun and moon and Mars also then playing into that the urgency with which you feel the need to express yourself. And you may get some weird reactions within your relationships to that. But I wouldn't stress out about it too much. I would try not to argue, but you may feel a sense of certain relationships having run their course. And while I wouldn't so much recommend, unless you're willing to deal with the fallout of an argument or a conflict, to be completely upfront about like cutting someone out of your life, you may want to step away from some people. There is a full moon here, which does say some relationships have kind of found their course. They've they've played out the course of the lifespan of that relationship. And again, maybe those are some of the superfluous relationships that we were seeing come up for us, generally speaking. Now, the sun will also be moving from your first house into your second house this month. So the beginning of the month is very strongly focused on you and your own energy and your own personality and your own drive and the direction that you are pursuing in your life. And that is then bringing that enthusiasm and that energy into your sense of your own resources, your own security, possibly developments when it comes to your income, or at least a lot of enthusiasm and energy that you have about increasing your own personal resources. But just again, be careful of any conflict that arises here and make sure that you're not running afoul of any authorities around you. So, I mean, for instance, make sure that you are authorized all the way up to like take overtime if you were to decide to do that would be one very specific example of that kind of a thing. But yeah, so that's the sun moving into your second house on the 19th. And then we have on the 27th that Taurus new moon is also going to be taking place in your second house. So we have even more so this sparking up an intense drive for you to see this matter of increasing your sense of security and stability and the resources within you, possibly even working on talents and skills and things like this, which also represent resources. Not to mention your own confidence in yourself can be an emotional resource that you can carry. But there's a spark of an intense drive for you to see this through completion in this fixed sign of Taurus, and very little patience for procrastination or for compromise along any of these lines. So again, I would just watch out a bit for conflict around that time, but you're getting really serious about this part of your life during this time. And finally, we have Venus moving again into your first house like it did prior to its retrograde. And this brings some sense of benefit and enjoyment to your personality. So you could be coming off very charming, very lighthearted, and just focused on your own. It's beyond charisma. It's this sense of like a magnetism of your mood and the way that you carry yourself throughout this month that's getting really highlighted. So this could even lighten your mood quite a bit to have Venus moving into this house of your personality, especially as it comes through and highlights that Neptune, which is going to be very new to you, and as the sun has recently just come through that area. So yeah, it looks like a really fascinating, beautiful month for you in which you're really focused on your own personal expression and your own personality and your personal growth and development in your life right now. But again, like everyone, it's going to be very necessary to try to avoid any sort of conflicts around this time. But yeah, I think that is pretty much what I have for you, Aries. For Taurus, what we have is Neptune moving into your 12th house. And so that is bringing a sort of dreamy, etheric, optimistic, expansive energy to your subconscious and is going to be connecting you much more into what's going on beyond the veil. So it's tuning you in intuitively to spiritual or collective consciousness. And I went into this in a video that is linked in the description below where I took Neptune through the houses. This is going to be taking place over the course of about 14 years, and I went into it in depth there. So if you want more on that, I would check out that video. But this could also, though, be bringing some confusion to you around your subconscious and what's going on with you. What's going on with the parts of you that are a little bit beyond your own control in the 12th house. I would, throughout the whole time, but perhaps especially around this time, be avoiding overdoing it on substances and things like this. But yeah, I would definitely recommend checking out that other video for a more in-depth breakdown. Now, on the 13th, we have the Libra full moon taking place in your sixth house of work and duties and your routine, your skills. And so there's a need to find balance for you between taking care of yourself, a sense of self-care, a sense of spiritual nourishment and nurturance of yourself, and your the physical demands and physical needs of your life. So the routine, certainly your working life, the tasks you do, even errands and things like this, chores that you do in your life, but also potentially your health. So there may be a point in this month where it's brought to your attention that you may need to really step back from something you may be overexerting about and to step back into what you yourself and your own soul needs, with the other side of this taking place in Aries in your 12th house. That is your own internal needs. So a need to find balance between yourself and potentially even the tasks and expectations that you think that other people have of you. So assertion versus harmony when it comes to your day-to-day life and routine. If that's very out of balance, there may be a need to gently or passively address that for yourself here while avoiding conflict. Now, Mars is moving from your third house into your fourth house. And so this is bringing some enthusiasm and energy to you when it comes to your home and your family life, as well as your roots. So you may be feeling very assertive when it comes to your home life, and I would try your best to avoid any sort of conflict that is of a very heightened potentiality for you this month. Is that there's something getting out of balance in your home life, basically, and it could be very argumentative. So I would be very careful of any conflict within your home or your family, and also to make sure that you're not running too afoul of your family or any sort of authorities over your home. So even when it comes to like a landlord or something like this, I would just make sure that you're not being too conflictual with them, because again, that's likely to be a lose-lose situation. Now, the sun is going to be moving into your first house here, which can have the themes of your personality, how you express yourself, how you show up in the world coming to the fore for you. And again, this is probably addressing some of the assertion and relationship dynamic kinds of energies that we're all dealing with in this month for you, where you may be needing to come back to yourself and pull some of your energy back to yourself, is really how I would see that playing out for Taurus during this time. Now, the Taurus new moon that is taking place in your first house is likely to spark up a very intense drive for you to see matters of personal significance and importance, to see matters of your own confidence through to a sense of completion. So this is probably a major focus of yours, is your own sense of confidence in yourself and comfort with yourself. And you're likely to show during this time, though, very little patience for procrastination or for compromise. And this is going to be very evident. So if there's a potential for that energy in you to be causing issues, if it's highly visible, I would try to find alternative ways to express that, like asserting control and energy over your home, but although that could also get pretty intense. Man, it's kind of a bit of a minefield this month, I gotta admit. Um, I would just do so as passively as you possibly can. But it is something that's necessary for you to do around that Taurus new moon to see again, to completion with this fixed energy, a development, a building, a continual building of your own sense of self and confidence in yourself around this time. And again, I would even for you possibly caution against crowds. And I will just throw that out there just because, again, people who are reacting to this new moon that could really draw their attention to you. So I would just be a bit careful about subjecting yourself to those kinds of people, even if they have no real excuse to engage with you, they may really be drawn to. So I would just watch out for that quite a bit. Now, Venus is also then going to be moving into your 12th house again. And this, in and of itself, brings some benefit and enjoyment to the area of, again, your subconscious and your inner world, so to say, your spiritual life. And so that's going to be playing into the themes that Neptune is bringing up of that kind of etheric quality to that, where you're tapping into the collective consciousness, or you're tapping into some sort of spiritual connection that may be quite new. That should be feeling quite pleasant and interesting throughout this month. So that looks really good and interesting to me. But yeah, other than that, I think that is pretty much what I have for you, Taurus. So thank you so much for being here. And let's go ahead and step forward to Gemini. Okay, so for Gemini, we have Neptune moving into your 11th house, which is bringing a etheric kind of dreamy, optimistic energy that's very expansive to your 11th house of your social life and your hopes and dreams, particularly aspects of your social life which are of benefit to you. And so this could have you very optimistic about the people that you're connecting with. It can also have them even more inclined to support you throughout this period of time. You could also wind up connecting with more of a spiritual community or a creative artistic community. I went into this in depth in another video, so that one is linked in the description below, where I spoke directly to this 14-year transit of Neptune through all of the houses, and it'll be in your 11th house for about 14 years. So if you want more on that, definitely check that out. But do keep in mind that as we're easing into this, sometimes we're going to completely forget that Neptune's there. Sometimes it's going to seem to fly under the radar. We're really dealing with a long game here. But with this ingress, it's going to be a new energy. So we're probably going to notice it a bit more. And another thing that Neptune can wind up bringing in is some confusion. So that is something that I would just kind of keep in mind, is that we could be facing some confusion about who who is of benefit to us. So that's something I would caution about a bit, is I wouldn't just trust everyone just because it seems like people are responding quite well to you around this time. And it may even bring some confusion to your goals and your dreams for yourself. Your long-term vision is likely to become so much more like broad and beautiful in the coming years, but there's also going to be moments where it feels vague, and it feels sometimes you're probably even going to react to it as, is this realistic? And if feelings like that are coming up, it's Neptune's here, it's new. We're just going to be playing through that. Oh, sorry, I'm Gemini rising, but we're just going to be playing through that for the 14 years to come, and there's going to be ebbs and flows like that. So we'll have to embrace the fact that sometimes confusion is going to be coming up, but ultimately it's a really nice transit. So, yeah, if you want more on that, I definitely recommend checking out that longer video. But then we also have on the 13th of April, the Libra full moon will be taking place in your fifth house of your personal creativity, creative expression, what makes you very unique and individual. It can also play into themes of your children and things like this. And so there will be a need to find a balance between social concerns and your own creativity and your own sense of the muse, so to say. So, what it is that you like versus how it is that you try to give in to others to an extent, especially friends that you want to get along with, because this full moon is taking place along the 11th house, fifth house axis. So you are needing to really tune into what you like and what you enjoy creatively. There may be a need to balance the needs of your children with the needs of colleagues or those who support your career or friends, your social life versus your children. Things like this are likely to be coming up around that time. And remember that we have this in a T-square to Mars in your second house. So you may be feeling like you don't have the resources to meet the needs of both of these areas of your life. And that can be energetic resources for sure. So I would just caution around any tension that winds up building up there. It's probably not a cause of that requires conflict in order to resolve it, but you may need to make the resources that you have clear to people and just let them know if you don't have energy for something. So there's a need to find balance between assertion and harmony here basically for you around the middle of the month. Now, Mars is going to be moving into your third house on the 17th, and it was there before for a brief time late last year. And this can bring some major enthusiasm and energy to your connections, to the people, places, and things around you, to your communication, to your transportation and things like this, your neighborhood. So watch for lead foot for sure. Watch for any sort of conflict with neighbors or those around you, with siblings or anything like that too. And do keep in mind that people may speak more sharply to you, and you may also be speaking more sharply than you are aware of around this time. But there is a lot of social enthusiasm that you're experiencing throughout this this broader period of time, really. And with the sun in your 11th house, and then as it moves on, then Mars is in your third house. So throughout the entire month, you're dealing with heightened energy for socializing, and that could be something that is pretty cool. But again, just watch out for any conflicts that arise, and definitely try to make sure that you're not running afoul of anyone with authority over you. And again, watch a lead foot. Watch out for accidents when you are traveling around. So then the sun will finally, it'll move into Taurus, which is your 12th house, and that can have the themes of what's going on in your subconscious, in your inner world, in your spirit, so to say, and your connection to spiritual energies. This can have that arising for you in a way that is much more apparent to you throughout this period of time, and you may be really focused on taking care of yourself spiritually, so to say. So taking care of your emotions, taking care of your values, and making sure that you are, in a deep sense, very comfortable with the action that you're taking throughout this upcoming month after the 19th of April into May as well. Now, you're also going to have a new moon in that 12th house with the new moon in Taurus. And so this could really spark up a pretty intense drive to connect more spiritually, to make this more of a part of your life, and to take hold even also of your shadow, your subconscious, and what's basically going on in there. And so there's very likely to be little patience or compromise with having an awareness of problems for you subconsciously, psychologically, when it comes to your shadow that aren't being addressed. So you're very likely to want to actually address this. It's not just that it's coming to light, the moon is coming through and making that much more real, and making you want to then, in a tangible way, address that. So I would just be Be careful, of course, like everyone else, when it comes to conflicts. But I would also say that there could be for you a subconscious conflict that winds up arising, and it would be wise to try to address that straightforwardly with this new moon, and especially because of the fact that the conflict that arises with that new moon could then spill out into the outside world where people then could have like your subconscious shadow could then be put on display for others. So that I would really try to avoid by addressing it head on yourself there. Also, yeah, I would say for you as well, avoiding crowds around that new moon would probably be wise. You could subconsciously attract some of the types of actors that are going to be responding to this energy in a more conflictual or malignant way. So finally, then we have Venus moving into your 11th house, which is emphasizing the benefit and enjoyment for you of matters in your life, especially social matters or those around your ambitions and your goals that bring you benefit and enjoyment. So it should just have you in a much better mood as we move into May, that you're probably going to be super optimistic and excited about future prospects and about your ability to connect with other people in a very graceful and harmonious way. And I think it's just going to feel like really quite good to have both Neptune and uh, Venus in that house for the first time ever in your life, because we haven't had Neptune in Aries for 165 years. So none of us have ever experienced this energy before, including all of us with Gemini, where we're experiencing it in this really wonderful place in our charts here. So yeah, I would expect a huge a rush of enthusiasm and goodwill and good vibes, basically from yourself and others, to have you just very excited as we move into May. So that's really wonderful. But yeah, I think that's pretty much what I have for you, Gemini. So thank you so much for being here, and let's go ahead and transition now to Cancer. Okay, so for Cancer, we have Neptune moving into your 10th house. You move my chart here real quick. So we have Neptune moving into your 10th house of your career and your life direction, your reputation, your life goals, basically, and how you achieve those. And so it's bringing a very etheric, dreamy, expansive, optimistic energy to this part of your life, of your career and your goals and your ambition. And so you may be feeling waves of a new type of excitement and optimism about your public life, basically. But there could be infused with that also a sense of confusion that may start to arise. Now, I went into this in depth in a video, which I'm going to put in the description below, because I just talked about Neptune and its transit through all of our houses for all signs. And this is a 14-year transit. That's a really big deal. And so I can't really go into the whole thing here. But suffice it to say, if you start to wonder why some neat new ideas about your public life start to come through to you in this period of time, and yet it seems to be a little bit confusing, that's Neptune in your 10th house there. So yeah, I would check out that video in the description if you want more about that. But then we also have the Libra full moon is going to be taking place in your 4th house of your home and family. And so this could be bringing up a need to find balance between your home life and your working life. So work-life balance is really going to be highlighted during this month for you, and questions of assertion versus harmony. So maintaining harmony with others versus your own sense of your ambitions for yourself and the fact that your life is your own. Things like this are likely to be coming up quite strongly throughout this period of time, and you're likely to need to make some decisions about what you're going to wind up prioritizing. And I would also not be surprised if both sides of this equation are putting a lot of pressure on you to respond to their needs. So you could have family that's saying, we're not getting enough from you. And what bosses or clients or whatnot, people in your working life that are saying that they are not getting enough from you because of the fact that with this Libra full moon, it's in a T square to Mars, which is in your first house. So both of these places are really putting a draw on your own personal energy. And so that you may need to assert about like, hey, I can't be 100% of me for everyone, because that's crazy. So I would try to, as passively as you can, address that issue and try to move on without too much conflict. But then you will also have that Mars move into your second house of your personal resources, your income, your sense of security and stability. And so it's going to be bringing a lot of enthusiasm and energy into that part of your life. And you may feel very driven to build up again your own resources. So you're not just like giving them to everyone all the time. And also around your income, you may feel very driven to earn more. You may feel even to the point where you may take on something on the side, or you may volunteer to do overtime, or this could even be something that is coming to you. For instance, if you have a business, you may have a bit of an influx that can feel also like a bit of a pressure on you of clients or something like this. So I would just be careful again of any sort of conflict then with working colleagues because the Sun and Mars are going to stay square pretty much. And they're going to be going from your 10th house of career and your public standing and your first house of yourself down and out to your second house of your own resources and income. And then that Sun is also going to be in your 11th house of colleagues and people who can benefit your career and stuff. So I would super avoid conflict with those people throughout this time because one thing with Mars, it's not always going to come out as a problem, kind of a transit. But one thing to keep in mind is that it can be a problem. And so, with it squaring the sun and in the house of your income, I would just hate to see a work conflict cause a decrease or a problem with your income. So, that's kind of what's at stake about that. And I would definitely make sure you're not running afoul of anyone who has authority over you. So, like I said, the sun is going to be moving into your 11th house on the 19th, and that is having those themes of your social life and those who benefit you, colleagues, the organizations you belong to and identify with, society, your hopes and dreams and aspirations and things like this. It's having the sun come in and really highlight those themes in your life. So, this is likely to be an increasingly social time and also a time where the sun and Neptune could be kind of conspiring to bring up some ideas for you about the direction in which you would like to take your life for the future. So that's going to be some of the stuff that's also coming up around this time and should really be benefited by the sun coming through that house. Now, you're also then going to have that Taurus new moon taking place in your 11th house as well. And so that could spark up a really intense drive for you to see these socially beneficial contacts through completion. So you could be establishing or joining an organization, or you could be really putting a lot of energy and attention into your social relationships with your own goals and dreams in mind here as well. And likely this is going to be complicating your patience for procrastination or compromise in this area. So again, I would just really try not to conflict with colleagues during this time. And I would try to be as patient as you possibly can with people and with your dreams to come through. You've got a 14-year Neptune in your 10th house transit that you're starting now. And so these things aren't going to be immediate. They will build up over time, though. So maintaining that faith is going to be really important. Try not to be impatient about things. And yeah, also then be super careful, as with everyone, about any sort of conflict around this period of time, but especially with friends and colleagues and so forth. And it might be best to avoid crowds for you around that new moon in Taurus, because that new moon in Taurus is going to be sun and moon in your 11th house of groups of people and stuff. And then it's going to be also experiencing a T square from Pluto in your eighth, which is already a bit of something I would side eye in terms of potential exposure to malignant people. And then also Mars squaring that from a relatively less crowd relevant area of your chart of the second house, but that T square is still going on. So I would be careful about crowds around that Taurus new moon. Now, finally, then Venus will also be joining Neptune in your 10th house this month. And so that is going to also be bringing some benefit and enjoyment to this area of your public standing and your reputation, your legacy, and how you see your future unfolding for you. So you're likely to really be tapping into some big hopes and dreams and getting super clear about that throughout the course of this month. But do understand that even as you're building greater clarity around this, there's going to be moments in time where that Neptune can cause some confusion. It could even cause some doubt because of the fact that it will be ebbing and flowing. Things aren't always going to be completely clear for you in this area of your life in the coming years. And this will be a good practice run for you when those matters of confusion and possible doubt creep in as you feel that inspiration arising and then react to it a bit as this feels like a too good to be true kind of a thing, or this feels like a wishing for something that's too grand kind of a thing. When that comes through, then you may have that reaction of doubt. And this would be a good time to practice calming yourself in those moments so that you're not just leaning into that doubt and then minimizing the full potential of especially this Neptune in your 10th house transit that you're going to be having at your disposal throughout this period of time. So yeah, I think that is pretty much what I have for you, Cancer, for April. So thank you so much for being here, and let us scooch forward to Leo. Okay, so for Leo, we have Neptune now in your ninth house, and this is going to be a 14-year transit. There's information in the description box about a video that I've made. There's a link to it, not just information about it. There's a link to that video where I go in depth for each sign as to what this 14-year transit will play out as. But just suffice it to say, on a kind of a summary level, that this is going to be bringing some very spiritualized, etheric, dreamy, optimistic, expansive energy into your ninth house of personal growth and expansion and development. This could take you overseas at times. This could have you pursuing educational or like study opportunities to learn more about the world, to expand your horizons and therefore to expand yourself personally. Now, this could also then introduce some confusion into this area where you may wind up feeling confused about your own like spiritual path even, or your own philosophy about things. And that'll come in ebbs and flows. If you start to encounter that this month, don't freak out. That's what Neptune does, and you'll learn to work with that energy as it comes to this area. There's going to be periods of time, as I've been mentioning, with everyone. These long-term transits, we can get way used to them to the point where we kind of forget that they're there and they become the new normal. Because like I said, we're going to be dealing with this for 14 years. And so that is something that I would also keep in mind is that it's not always going to feel quite as intense as it probably will upon ingress, just because of the fact that it's completely new energy that we're dealing with, all of us in our lives. So that said, with the Libra full moon taking place in your third house, this is going to be highlighting some of the, say, people, places, and things around you and your engagement with those things. So your neighborhood, siblings, peers, even some of your working relationships, any sort of communication or exchange that you engage in. This full moon is going to be taking place in that area. So you may feel more like physically connected to those areas with this full moon taking place in this area of your neighborhood and your locality and so forth. You may want to go on a short trip or something like this. You may even be dreaming of a long trip with now Neptune going into your ninth house. And you may be trying to figure out some of the logistics around how to expand your horizons a bit more than you have. But this could also then have you needing to find some balance between what's required of you with, again, those around you and their reliance on you, their expectations of you versus the personal growth that you are feeling like very enthusiastic to tap into up in your ninth house of these trying new things, experiencing new places, new people, new ideas, new philosophies, and things like this. So you may feel a bit of a push and pull there. Now, these are, in my view, both perfectly lovely kinds of energies of the, community around us, and then also all of the other places and people and things in the world other than that. But there may be a need to address a sense of assertion versus harmony where it comes to certain areas where you may be feeling like you're playing small and you may need to work on your communication around that. So that is something that I would definitely keep in mind around that Libra full moon. So Mars, you may also have some technology or communication issues around that full moon too. But Mars is going to be moving also into your first house. And this is going to be bringing to you a lot of enthusiasm and energy. But definitely be careful to avoid, say, injury and enthusiasm to the point where you injure yourself or you overexert yourself or you overstep your bounds a bit. Um, so, for instance, in the case of that full moon, if there are people around you who rely on you, but you are really enthusiastic about wanting to expand your horizons, this could lead you to really speak sharply about your own desires. So I would just really try to be kind of cool with people about that and try not to over adopt that Martian energy into your personality. It will be giving you a lot of energy, which is great, and enthusiasm. So go with it, but it could also come through as a little bit angry or something like that. So I would be a little careful to make sure, especially that you're, not running afoul of anyone who has authority over you, since that Pluto is going to be opposing, I'm sorry, since that Mars is going to be opposing Pluto there too in your seventh house, where sometimes in the coming 20 years or so, I also have a video about that one, but in the coming 20 years or so, there will be times where you feel to an extent that people have some power or control over you. That's also getting a bit heightened there. So there's a push and pull here along social lines that I would just be as cool as you possibly can about. Now, the sun will be moving into your 10th house of your career and your personal reputation, your public life, and your like future visions for your life, what it is that you're trying to accomplish in this life. And so that house is going to be taking a There's going to be a lot of focus on that basically coming up for you. And you may be feeling like you're wanting to make some adjustments around that area. And you may even feel an urge or a tension building up around that too. So I would try not to make any hasty decisions. Again, especially because of that opposition between Mars and Pluto and so forth. But if you're able to navigate these energies in a frame of mind that is very non-reactive to others and just really focused on your own excitement and enjoyment and goodwill toward everyone involved, basically a lot of this is going to be playing out as you feeling awesome about yourself and about the possibilities of things. But if you start to show any sort of aggression or something, I could see how things could go a little bit sideways really quick. So again, I would just be a little bit careful about what kind of energy you're bringing to your working environment. The Taurus new moon is also going to be taking place in that area of your life, of your career and reputation. And so this could spark a really intense drive for you to see some project or to see a certain role of that you take on through to completion, whether that be a step up in your role or whether that be fulfilling your role in a really prideful, in a good sense, way where you're able to really like take credit for a job well done, basically. You're going to be really motivated to do so by that new moon. And the thing about this, though, is we're also then playing into the opposition between Mars and Pluto. And so you're very unlikely to have a lot of patience in your working life. And so it would be really great if you could work on really trying to be as patient and as compromising as you possibly can, again, within a working environment, and be super careful about any sort of conflict there, uh, for sure. Now, finally, Venus will be moving into your ninth house on the 30th of April as we start to get into May. That is going to be bringing a lot of enjoyment and a lot of benefit to those expanded horizons of yours, to your own personal development, to your sense of spirituality and philosophy. And again, it's just going to be really doubling down on what Neptune is doing in that place, where it's almost this like really almost childlike enthusiasm and feeling like, oh, the world is fascinating and I can't wait to learn about, this, that, and the other, and just getting really excited about that. And again, this really could light a fire under you to travel, to experience some travel, or to take some sort of course of study, or to be reading a lot. You could really be enjoying that, like losing yourself in the worlds of novels and so on and so forth. So yeah, if you enjoy novels at all, I would highly recommend doing a lot of reading because it's likely to be just so enjoyable for you, really throughout May, since this Venus is moving into the ninth house on the 30th of April. But yeah, I think that is pretty much what I have for you, Leo. So let's go ahead and move on to Virgo here. Okay, so for Virgo, we have Neptune moving into your eighth house, or rather, it is in your eighth house at this point, as of a couple of days before the month started. And I have done a whole longer video about just this transit because it's going to be going on for 14 years and it's a pretty big deal. And I went into depth on that, and that will be linked in the description below if you want to get more into that. But the summary of that would be that you will likely be feeling a more etheric or dreamy, expansive, optimistic energy coming into your sense of interdependency with others and your connection to others and what they are able to offer to you. So how your relationships could potentially benefit you. Now, on the other hand, with this, while this may be deepening some of your relationships, there is a bit of a risk for confusion and deception, even about who's actually beneficial and who might not be so great for you. So, questions of trust, maybe trusting a little bit too much at times, is just something to keep in mind that can definitely come up with Neptune moving into your eighth house. It could also be driving up some fascination for you to study or look into more deeply or to desire to better understand power dynamics with people, though. So that is something that you may want to do, and I would actually highly recommend for an eighth house transit like that. Now, the Libra full moon taking place on the 13th of April is going to be in your second house of your own resources, as opposed to that eighth house, other people's resources and what they bring to relationships. So, this full moon is taking place in the house of your own resources, your own income, your finances, and your sense of security and stability in and of yourself. And so, this could definitely be highlighting some of those questions of dependencies and interdependency and what kinds of people that you're wanting to connect to, and whether you see the people in your life as trustworthy and things like that. This could really be speaking to that, where you are feeling a desire to balance that kind of question of dependency with a greater sense of self-sufficiency around this period of time. So a question of assertion of your own self-sufficiency versus the type of harmony that can come up when we feel like we are showing ourselves to be trustworthy of others by potentially even giving into an interdependent situation that we might not be altogether comfortable with. So if that's something that is coming up for you with that Neptune yet, we probably will at some point, this full moon could really be asking you to bring that into balance and harmony between self-sufficiency and dependency throughout this time. Now, Mars is also going to be moving into your 12th house of your subconscious and of your own inner world, your spirituality and connection to spirit and so forth. So this is bringing a lot of energy and enthusiasm to this area of your life. You may really feel like there's there's a lot going on internally for you, like you are needing to or even desiring to sort out a lot of your own personal energies. You may also find that you have more energy during this time when you are alone and when you don't feel the need to, you know, be dealing with other people's expectations upon your energy and so forth. So that is something that I would watch out for here, is that I think that you'll probably feel a little stronger, a little less conflicted when you're alone, because I think there's going to be a lot of push and pull when it comes to other people just throughout this month for you, especially when it comes to big questions like those dependencies and self-sufficiency and so forth. And yeah, naturally, I would definitely try to watch out for running afoul of anyone with authority over you, because if you do so, and if you conflict with someone, especially in a working environment, I could see that play out for you with Mars in your 12th, opposite to Pluto in your 6th, as like, even if you conflict with someone who doesn't have authority over you, Pluto in your 6th can sometimes play out as a coworker being underhanded. And so I would worry that you could get an experience of Mars, a malefic, in your 12th, a place where you can see a losing of control represent a difficult situation in which there is some sort of blowback upon you that is quite a hindrance to you. So again, I would just be very careful about um, conflict, especially when it comes to your working life. So the sun will also then be moving into your ninth house of personal expansion, the expansion of your horizons, philosophy, spirituality, your fascination with uh, places far away and subjects that are very big. And so it's going to be bringing some of those themes coming into your life throughout this time of wanting to engage in greater personal development and possibly even addressing some spiritual concerns of yourself, especially in regard to anything that's going on with with your shadow, with this in connection with Mars that's going into your 12th. So a lot of energy and enthusiasm for spirituality, but again, it may be bringing up some themes of shadow to just be worked through somewhat, hopefully gently, throughout this period of time. You'll also then have the Taurus new moon playing out in that ninth house of yours, which is going to be really sparking up an intense drive for you to uh, expand again your own horizons, whether that be in a physical sense or to travel. It could be a real wanderlust getting worked up in you. Um, so it could play out in that way, but it could also be a desire to expand internally and to outgrow finally something that you may feel has been pulling you back or holding you back or even causing some level of like personal suffering with this new moon taking place in a T square to Pluto and Mars across that sixth and 12th house axis, which can get a little bit complicated. So, on the other hand, you may feel very impatient and very unwilling to compromise in this ninth house area. So, if you're planning travel with someone else, of course, it's necessary to take their desires into consideration as well. But you may also, like if a wanderlust does wind up arising for you, you may really feel an urge to just like drop everything and go somewhere. So I would just watch out a little bit for something like that. And yeah, other than that, we have Venus moving into your eighth house this month, which is fortunately bringing some benefit and enjoyment to this area of your dependencies with others and how other people can benefit you and so forth. So if there's been a little bit of confusion along those lines, you may further like feel a sense of rose-colored glasses with regard to other people around this time and a lack of clarity around whether someone's genuinely trustworthy throughout especially the beginning when Venus is in conjunction to Neptune, so pretty much until May. But I would say that it also makes it immensely more likely that the people around you genuinely are of benefit to you. So I would just, if your relationships are feeling good, I wouldn't so much worry about that quite yet. You can worry about that later, basically, and just enjoy it for now at the end of the month, because there's going to be so many headaches this month that any bits of enjoyment and excitement and enthusiasm that we can experience safely, I would really lean into those. So yeah, I think that is pretty much what I have for you for April. Virgo. And so, yeah, thank you so much for being here. And let's go ahead onto Libra now. Okay, so for Libra, for April, we have Neptune is now in your seventh house of partnerships and relationships, agreements with others. And so that is going to be bringing a much more etheric, dreamy, optimistic, expansive, like rose-colored glasses wearing energy to your relationships around starting around now and continuing on for about 14 years. You may really be connecting with more spiritually or creatively inclined or very romantic people throughout this time. And there is a video linked in the description where I went really in depth on this. So I'm not going to go like crazy in depth on that, but just suffice it to say that in summary, for this month, that's a new energy that you're dealing with. And so you may be noticing that coming up. It's not really a temporary thing. It's 14 years, but it will feel like a new energy. And you'll even at the very end of the month as well, with Venus moving then also into your seventh house. That is so incredibly romantic and very rose-colored glasses wearing. So you may get completely like swept up in a partnership or a relationship, and people may be being like really, really sweet to you and things like this. So it should actually be quite nice. And I wouldn't necessarily look for faults or problems in those things, but sometimes people can mislead us a bit when Neptune is around. But more often than not, it's just very sweet and helpful, much more so than it is deceptive. So yeah. Now, the Libra full moon is going to be taking place in your first house. And so that is going to be bringing up a need, which is something that you would kind of deal with throughout your whole life, of needing to find balance between yourself and others. That is just a natural thing that is the case for you, and between assertion versus harmony. So your relationships are really, really, really emphasized throughout this period of time. And I think that the best way for you to utilize this full moon would be to remember and tap into, potentially even journal about, so that you can look back to it as you get further and further into that Neptune in your seventh house transit. But to really define yourself and your sense of boundaries and what you like, because you will be leaning in the other direction quite a bit for a little while here of other people's concerns and so forth. So try to maintain that balance. Do know that you're probably going to really, really want to connect with other people, and that is perfectly fine as long as you are clear with yourself about your boundaries. And that's one thing that this Libra full moon is really going to be bringing up here. Especially, there could even be like work-life balance stuff that winds up coming up. You may be feeling like you're burning the candle at both ends when it comes to work and socializing, and things like that may be coming up. And I would just try not to be aggressive about trying to address that. Try to address it gently in a way that doesn't create more conflict. So we also then have Mars moving into your 11th house of colleagues and people who bring benefit to you, as well as your own hopes and dreams in life. And so this is going to be bringing some enthusiasm and energy to this area of your life. Again, you're going to have a strong desire to be social and to connect with others and to share your ideas with others. And so that should go over pretty well, since you're going from the sun in your seventh house to Mars in your 11th house. This is going to be all month that you're really going to be enjoying connecting with other people. But again, I would just, because of the square between the sun and Mars, I would just definitely try not to run afoul of anyone who has authority over you, or anyone who could potentially be of benefit to you, but might not be if you cross them, kind of a thing, you know? So I would just really try not to be too short-sighted about how it is that you're treating other people, because you kind of never know who could help you out in a different kind of a situation, you know? So just again, kind of keeping that in mind. But it does look like a really cool month for socializing. Again, the sun will then be moving from the 7th to the 8th around the same period of time. And that is going to be bringing, it's not then just a focus on your partnerships and your relationships. It's bringing that a bit deeper then. So, for instance, if you have been trying to define yourself and your own expectations and so forth with the full moon in Libra, and then you're dealing with the Neptune energy in your seventh house, You could also then, with the sun moving into your eighth house, that is a place of where we can become dependent on others and where we connect very deeply and intimately and vulnerably with others. It can connect us to other people's resources and so forth in a way in which I feel like we can sometimes lose ourselves a little bit or lose a sense of autonomy. So, with the sun moving into that eighth house, I kind of wonder if you might be looking at that and trying to think that through. And I think that that would be quite good and wise to f try and shed some light on how it is that you do power dynamics in relationships for good and for bad. Definitely look at that shadow too, but also give yourself credit where it's due. If you like recognize red flags when they come up, or if you try to step away from something that would make someone dependent on you as necessary, and so on and so forth, you're likely really looking into how it is that relationship dynamics wind up playing out. And I think that that's actually pretty cool to have playing out just a few weeks after Neptune's gone into your seventh, because it can, the more that you pay attention to that, the more you're going to avoid any of the negative side effects of Neptune in that seventh, and then you can really just kind of benefit from it quite a bit. Now, also then the Taurus new moon will be taking place in your eighth house as well. And so this could really spark up an intense drive in you to have very trustworthy, intimate, vulnerable relationships with others where you can really like share of your spirit and your emotion within that connection and understand that you're safe within that you're able to do so safely. But it could also then have you very impatient and unwilling to compromise when it comes to those kinds of relationships. So you may feel the need to like rush a relationship through some steps. I would really caution about that because then you're playing right into the potential negative side effects of Neptune in your seventh, basically. And yeah, so and you also we don't really want too many eighth house like things implying or making the seventh house transits more complicated because they totally could. So I just so would not push a relationship, and I would definitely try to be as good as you can about compromising with the understanding, since you're Libra, I definitely need to emphasize this, with the understanding that what you're seeking is balance. What you're seeking is not to just give, give, give and have someone else take, 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 which you can sometimes do. So, always reminding yourself that if you are in a relationship in which you're giving more than you're taking, that is not fair to either of you, you know? So don't feel bad if you do need to assert some boundaries and things like that at times. Just try your best under this influence to not feel like deeply vulnerable and raw and and therefore really feeling like a situation needs to be resolved and completely clear right now fully, because that's really likely to not have winners in that kind of a situation. And there's a huge amount of energy to that. So yeah, and we discussed Venus then also moving into your seventh house, increasing benefit and enjoyment of relationships, and really playing into that Neptune there, really making the romantic aspects of relationships as well as the like sweetness of partnerships and friendships and so forth really apparent and really quite nice and pleasant. So yeah, I think that is pretty much what I have for you, Libra. So thank you so much for being here. And let's go ahead and move on to Scorpio here. Okay, so for Scorpio, we have Neptune in your sixth house now. I have just recently gone in depth on these transits where I described what Neptune is going to be like in your sixth house. So I have that linked in the description below. But in summary, since this is a very new energy that you're going to be dealing with this month, this Neptune in your sixth house is going to bring a much more etheric, dreamy, expansive, optimistic energy to your daily routine. And so you may find that you're wanting to infuse a little bit more magic into your day-to-day life, basically. And the issue though here is that it can be difficult to maintain a routine when you have Neptune moving through this house. Now, it does make life more magic, and that is totally worth it, really. But you could feel like your routine is slipping or that it's just a little bit more difficult to get a grasp on. I would not overly stress about that too much. All that you can really do about that is try to make sure that your routine is enjoyable, and then Neptune is more likely to allow for it. But it's going to be a while before a routine is really just like a straightforward, easy thing to maintain again, I hate to say. Also, it could bring some confusion to health. So one thing is if you're getting like weirdly stressed about your health and you don't usually, Neptune in this place could it could definitely drive up some like hypochondria and stuff like that. So I wouldn't overly stress, but if you're getting an intuitive sense about your health or something like that, and you're able to go to a doctor or something, then I don't see any issue there. But yeah, it should really be having you really want to almost it's almost like spiritually aligning your routine to where you're able to connect what it is that you do in your daily life with your purpose with Neptune here. So yeah, there's more in the link below though. So on the 13th of April, we have the Libra full moon taking place in your 12th house. And that again is going to be bringing up some questions about spirituality as well as routine and health and things like that. So likely this is going to be a big thing this month is to try to create of your day-to-day life more of a spiritual experience and a richer environment for your inner world to bloom in that outer life and that routine of yours, to not just kind of sweep that aside and act like, well, no, this is something that I really just need to compartmentalize and then I need to be completely serious otherwise. That is going to feel like a bit of a drag. So there's a major need to find balance in your spirituality by bringing it more into your day-to-day life. And I think that that's going to make your day-to-day life then feel a lot more harmonious for you. So Mars, though, will be going into your 10th house, and that is bringing some enthusiasm and energy to your goals, your future goals for yourself, to your sense of your social reputation, to the performance basically of your social roles in life. And I would just be careful with this greater energy that you have. Could get a bit impatient and reactive, and it could cause some conflicts in your working life. So I would just be a little bit careful about that, especially around running afoul of anyone who has authority over you. This could really be like a speaking more forcefully than you expect kind of a thing that winds up playing out there, and hopefully not. One of the things with what we consider malefics, of which Mars is one, as it transits through an area, we do need to be extra careful there because it can play out as a negative thing that happens. And one of the ways that you can avoid a negative thing happening from this transit would be to not be aggressive, basically in your working life. So that's just something I would try to do. It's going to be about a month and a half or two that we're going to have Mars in that area. So it's not forever, but just for now, especially as we're dealing with the opposition to Pluto in particular, and the squares to the sun and everything. It's just very, very tense. So I would lay as low as you possibly can while not wasting the enthusiasm and energy that you have for this area of your life. So then we have the sun moving into your seventh house of partnerships and relationships. So there could be some clarity around those relationships coming up for you. You may be feeling like you're identifying with other people more easily, like your relationships feel right more. They feel like you are able to like shine out in the world with the sun there, basically that you feel recognized and seen within your relationships. And so you're able then to be supportive of others as well. So that should be quite nice, but it will be having you definitely focusing on your relationships more as well. The Taurus full moon, Taurus new moon rather, is also going to be taking place in your seventh house. And this could really spark up an intense drive for you to relate to others and to connect to others. And you may also then feel a sense of a lack of patience or compromise. So I would definitely try to avoid that kind of a thing within your relationships because that's exactly where that kind of an energy doesn't work out so well. So yeah, I would just be very cautious of any conflict around your relationships in this time frame. And additionally, for you, I think I would recommend to avoid crowds to some extent around that new moon because of the fact that that new moon is going to be in your seventh house of other people and connections, relationships, and that will then be square to the Mars, which is up in your 10th house, which can also play out as things up in the world. And then that Pluto at the core of your chart in the fourth house. That's a lot of tense energy. And considering it is playing out with a conflict toward potentially you, Pluto, uh, from the seventh house and the 10th, I would just, even if you are not connected to and like an unsettled person, let's say, and an unsettled person has no need to or excuse to engage with you, they might be drawn to. So that is something that I would watch out for there, is crowds, specifically around that new moon, around the 27th. Now, then Venus will be moving into your sixth house of tasks and routine and daily life and things like this, the things that you do, your activities. And so that again is going to bring some benefit and enjoyment to this area of your routine. Again, infusing a little bit more magic and enjoyment into that daily life of yours, and probably translating some of what Neptune is going to have in the ether around you as little energies to pick up on. It's probably going to make it a lot more tangible and clear for you of some of the things that you're wanting to adjust in order to have a more enjoyable routine in your life, basically. But yeah, that I think is pretty much what I have for you, Scorpio. So thank you so much for being here. And let's go ahead and talk about Sagittarius now. Okay, so for Sagittarius, we have Neptune now in your fifth house, which is quite lovely. I have recently done a video, which I have linked in the description, where I will have looked at Neptune in the fifth house for you, Sagittarius, and gone in depth on it. It's a 14-year transit, but it's starting pretty much right before April. So it's a very new energy, but if you do want a lot more information about the 14 years that we're going to be dealing with this, then that is there. But in summary, for the like opening phase where we're likely to really feel this, because in the coming 14 years, this is going to ebb and flow. There are times where we are going to completely forget that this planet is in Aries in our charts, and then it will basically come back and flow again, and then it will ebb and flow. As it steps in, it's going to be such a new energy that we're very, very likely to feel it and notice it. So, in this beginning stage, you are likely to feel a very much more etheric, dreamy, expansive, optimistic energy starting to infuse or envelop your sense of creativity, self-expression. If you have children, they could be becoming very much more imaginative and a little bit sweeter and maybe even a little bit overboard with that. But there's a lot of imagination coming into your creativity. And so one of the things that I like the most about Neptune in the fifth house is I do really feel like that Neptune is a major indicator of our connection with the muse, so to say, or the collective consciousness, where as that comes into the place of our self-expression and creativity, it seems so perfect to have it there because, especially if you are a creative type, not only then are you able to maintain a inspiration, and with Neptune here, you are less likely, for sure, to be experiencing creative blocks. So they should be less frequent, especially if you're writing down ideas as they start to flow in a lot. That way you have something if there are creative blocks that wind up coming up. But um, it's really bringing that muse right into your creative efforts. So it's a really beautiful place to have this. Also, the fifth house is where we enjoy things, where we just are able to relax into ourselves, be ourselves, like what we like, do what we like, and so on and so forth, and not really have to put much thought into it. It's a very, very lighthearted place in the chart. And so to have Neptune here is just really wonderful. And one of the things, though, is that it can bring up some confusion. So you may find that in April or soon, that you have a new interest creatively or in terms of your hobbies or something like this, a new fascination, and it may seem to come out of nowhere. One thing I can say about that is that there's a good chance that it doesn't end there. That one thing with Neptune is it can bring us from one thing to another, to another, to another. And only when we're through the whole process can we see, like, oh, I never would have gotten to this point if I hadn't done, X, Y, and Z and A, B, and C and blah, 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 and back and forth and doing all of these different things. And while it may look like chaotic from the outside, it's like, no, in hindsight, I completely understand why all of that was entirely necessary. So you may find that you go through phases creatively or in terms of your interests and hobbies and so forth in the coming 14 years or so, and I would not be hard on yourself about that. That is very necessary. It's leading to something. Now, the Libra full moon is taking place in your 11th house on the 13th of April. And so that is really highlighting some of your social relationships as well as hopes and dreams and things like that. And so you may feel the need to balance the social relationships that you have and perhaps even like some professional goals or things like that with this new enthusiasm and this new excitement and new energy that Neptune is bringing into your fifth house, where you may feel like, well, I've been pursuing all of these different goals for a while, but now I have this new interest, and I'm not really sure that it completely aligns with that. And so you may be finding that, therefore, there are certain things that you've already established for yourself as a goal or as a relationship, or even as like a group that you belong to or something like that, where you may be finding that it has played out as it should, and that you then are able to move into something else and maybe kindly say goodbye to that thing from the past because it's basically served its purpose. So that full moon could definitely be bringing in some of those themes for you. And I would just, be gentle with the people that are involved in those things that are other than you, and that should be really perfectly okay. Now, Mars is going to be moving into your ninth house of personal, like expansion of your horizons. You may feel an urge to travel. You may even feel an urge to like get away, because of the squares and stuff that are coming up as well during this whole like broader month, basically. You may be feeling like, oh my God, like all of this pressure and all the tensions, and I just want to get away, like just can this just not be something that I'm dealing with? So if that's the case, I would just again try to be sensitive to others where they may intersect with those kinds of plans, and possibly even I I might consider waiting until the end of May to travel, just because Mars can be quite complicated sometimes and it can introduce problems. And it is in that travel house. So I would just kind of keep that in mind. If you do travel, be very careful, you know. So other than that, it's going to be just really infusing your spirit, so to say, with a lot of enthusiasm and energy to learn to again broaden your horizons, to study something, to go and travel somewhere, to experience new people and new places, new things, unfamiliar territories, and so forth. And so that should be absolutely really quite wonderful. If you're a student, I would really watch out for running afoul of authority, teachers, and things like that. Also, if you are traveling, I would really watch out for running afoul of like visa authorities and things like that because of that opposition between that Pluto and then that Pluto in the third house and Mars in the ninth could totally play out as either of those. So also, it probably won't, but if you're like daydreaming while driving or something like that, that could also be an issue, which I would caution about. Now, the sun is going to be moving into your sixth house, which is bringing a lot more focus and awareness around your routine and your skill set and your daily life, basically, possibly also your health. And so this could have you feeling like you're wanting to make some change there. You're wanting to enliven your routine and enliven your life to a much larger extent than you have been recently, and that is only going to be highlighted even more so by the Taurus new moon. There's something here about changing your routine. I think you're probably feeling a bit stuck in a rut, honestly, and you probably have been for a little while, but this is really coming through to spark up a really intense drive for you to see to completion the genuine upliftment of your daily life so that you don't feel like just a lot of frustration or impatience or a lack of a sense of desire in your again in your daily life, your day-to-day routine. You know, if you're waking up and you're not really excited about your day or something like this, to change that. There's a real desire to change that in this. Now, you may have very, very little patience for procrastination or for compromise along these lines. And that is just something that I would watch out for a bit because of the fact that that new moon is going to be taking place at a T square to both Mars and Pluto, which could really throw your routine if you're not careful about. It's almost like if you get too cocky and confident about this is how my life needs to be, that there may be people in the environment that try to react to that by clamping down or boxing you in even more than they would have if you had done this kind of more gently and with some patience and with some level of compromise. So just be kind of gentle about these things, I think would be really good. So also, yeah. So during around that new moon time for you too, I would avoid crowds because of the fact that that T square between Mars in your ninth house, Pluto in your third, and then the sun and the moon in your sixth could indicate an unhealthy or difficult situation that's playing out around you, you know? So, something to keep in mind. Now, Venus then is also going to be joining Neptune in your fifth house at the very end of the month, and it'll be there for a bit into May. And that should be also really wonderful in the way that Neptune is, it's going to make a lot more tangible and real what Neptune is trying to tell you, because Neptune is very vague, and very etheric, and sometimes it can be really easy to miss what it's trying to bring up. And so Venus is going to be coming through, really highlighting that and making it more conscious and making it possible for you to recognize, okay, this is a really nice thing that I would like to have, rather than I vaguely need like change and I'm feeling like I want more magic and like there's magic available to me, but how do I really like bring it into my life? I really feel like Venus coming into that area with Neptune is going to make that a lot more clear. And again, this is just so wonderful for anything creative. It's also really wonderful for lighthearted relationships, for your relationships with your children, and for romantic connections are very, very, very romantic. Uh, Although rose-colored glasses wearing, so you might want to keep that in mind. But it should just be a really, really beautiful, enjoyable time there. So, yeah, I think that is pretty much what I have for you, Sagittarius, for April. So, thank you so much for being here. And let's go ahead and talk about Capricorn. Okay, so for Capricorn, Neptune is in your fourth house now. And I just did a whole long in-depth video where I took Neptune through all of the houses for different signs, and that'll be linked in the description below. But for now, it will be important to mention it because it's a very new energy that we're going to be experiencing. And so this is going to be bringing a more etheric, dreamy, expansive, optimistic energy to your sense of your home and your family life, as well as your connectedness with your roots. And so you may feel some spiritual connection to your family kind of coming up and feel more connected, maybe even to ancestors or to your roots, and wanting to look more into that, wanting to feel more connected to that. So you may be looking into those kinds of things, but this can soften your relationships with your family as well, and it can also have you wanting to like dress up your home a little bit more to bring a little bit more magic into your home, probably for sure through redecoration, especially later this month when Venus comes into your fourth house. You're really going to want to make your home beautiful and harmonious energetically as well, like almost like feng shui or something like this would be really, really nice. Clearing your space would be definitely very nice because if there are energies in your home, you're likely to be absorbing them with Neptune here. But yeah, so it's bringing that energy basically to your core, which should be pretty nice. But there could also be some confusion in this area of your life. So even your family relationships may feel like they are more confusing around this period of time, and that's just the nature of Neptune being there. Now, the Libra full moon is going to be in your 10th house on the 13th of April there, and that is going to be speaking directly to a need to balance your home and working life. And you may be wrapping up a project around this time. You may be wrapping up like a phase of something around this time. And you may really feel like you want to find a little bit more harmony, a little bit more peace, a little bit more calm within your working life around this time. And you may be playing the role of a peacekeeper in a working conflict. Now, I would caution about that a little bit because the energies that we have this month are so freaking malefic and so malignant that I would worry as to whether that would actually even be of benefit to be a mediator. Now, if it's absolutely necessary, yes, you would be especially equipped, Capricorn, to address the issues in the environments that you're in that are coming up conflictually. But if you don't have to, I wouldn't even bother, you know. It's likely to just be a bit of a mess throughout this month. So for you, you're definitely seeking a lot of harmony, but I would not, for the sake of creating proactively harmony with other people, take other people's problems onto you because I don't think that that'll necessarily go the way that you're wanting. Withdrawal is probably a better or very like passiveness is probably a better way to actually get as much harmony as you can out of this period of time. So, Mars is going to be moving into your eighth house of interdependency, of joint resources, your intimate and vulnerable connections with other people. And so this is going to be really bringing a lot of enthusiasm and energy to any sort of relationships that you have along those lines, possibly a lot of passion to your like romantic relationships for sure. But it could also lead to conflict over power dynamics, especially if there are financial imbalances in any of your relationships. And that could really get out of hand. Even if this is just along the lines of a contract that you have, I would not go about, if you can avoid it, renegotiating any sort of a contract during this month at all. I, especially this month, as we get into May, and at least we get beyond that opposition between Pluto in your second house of your own finances and resources, and then Mars up there in the eighth house of other people's resources and contracts, and the ways in which you get financially entwined with other people and things like that. I would not be negotiating something like that under these influences. Now, when it comes to dealing with financial considerations in your like romantic relationships or family relationships or anything like that, that also is likely to go sideways. It just likely is. If you handle it gently, you might be able to proactively address those kinds of things. And I would say you probably don't really want to be bringing that into the workplace, but if it's a personal issue that you really need to resolve with someone like in a home or family relationship, even a roommate or something like that, I would just be as gentle as you can, but you are very likely to be um, very enthusiastic to address these things. So just make sure that you're not running afoul of any sort of authorities or people who have a sense of financial or emotional control over you. I wouldn't be poking that bear right now is the thing. Now, the sun is going to be moving into your fifth house, and that is lovely. That really lightens up a lot of the energy. It brings your focus to like, what do I enjoy? What is it that I want to do? There's all these tense energies around, and it seems kind of annoying and stupid. And I think that for you, a lot of the more lighthearted kind of energy that you're going to be experiencing this month is really going to be you centered. Because what we're dealing with is, Neptune in that fourth, that is very personal. It's a very private place. It's your home. It's you. And then Venus is going to be moving in there, and then the Sun is going to be moving into the fifth house. So I would definitely recommend if you are feeling introverted, go for it. Don't feel bad, because what's going on out in the world anyway during this month doesn't look to me like you're going to be missing out on really anything good anyway. So, this is, yeah, likely to have those themes of fun. Your children may also be a major focus in this time, but creativity and self-expression, and again, your own personal enjoyment, I think is going to be taking up more of your attention as we get later into the month. And then the Taurus new moon that's taking place on the 27th is also really going to spark up an intense drive for you to make sure that you're carving that out for yourself in your life, enjoyment, that you're creating a space in which you are just unashamedly, unquestionably making fun time, basically. So at that point, around this new moon, you may feel very impatient with regard to any sort of putting that off or compromising about it. So I would really try and make sure that you're making that time for yourself because you're going to need it. And if it's not well demarcated for you, then I think that it's going to feel a little bit more bound up with some of the other energies that are going on, and it could then have you putting your foot down a little bit more intensely than you intended with the sun then in your fifth house there. So let's see. Then, yeah, finally, we have Venus moving into your fourth house, and that is bringing some benefit and enjoyment to your home and family relationships and to your sense of your roots and everything like that. And so, again, those relationships should be going pretty well, and they should be lightening then as well. But by the end of once we get past that Taurus new moon, your home and family relationship should really be lightening up quite a bit as well. And then you'll just be able to enjoy a lot more of the benefits of having Neptune with Venus there and a lot less then of the tense energies that we've been dealing with throughout most of the month. So yeah, I think that that is pretty much what I have for you, Capricorn, for April. So I hope that you enjoyed this and I hope that it was helpful. Thank you so much for being here. So let's go ahead and switch to Aquarius now. So for Aquarius, we have Neptune in your third house this month, and I have just done a whole in-depth video about Neptune in your third house. That will be linked in the description if you want to go more into that. But suffice it to say, as this ingress happens, this is a very new transit for us. It's going to go on for 14 years, but it's new. And we've gotten very used to Neptune and Pisces. So what this is going to be bringing up for you that I would very much imagine you're going to be feeling this month is a much more etheric or dreamy, expansive, very like optimistic energy within your community, within the people, places, and things around you. You may be feeling like your daily life is a little bit more magical. And if it's not, that you are really feeling a desire to actively bring that in. So you may be finding that you are actively seeking out or being presented with like festivals or going to the park or going to like concerts or movies, or that you are somehow otherwise experiencing a sense of connection and creativity, really infusing that life that you experience on a daily basis and the things around you that you're engaging in. So you could also then be running into more creative people and so on, but there may also be some confusion that comes in with Neptune here. And so you may find that you are looking at the places and people and things around you and almost not recognizing it. You may actually feel like, why am I here? And so if that comes up, you've got a lot of time to answer that question for yourself. And if you want to make some changes to that end, but you may be feeling weirdly either more or less connected to the places around you, and that could really encourage you to travel more, to experience more places, and you may even decide that you want to have your roots in a different community, so to say, and it may be very far away, or it may just be a different neighborhood in your area that feels more bright, or even different haunts, so to say. So if you go to specific stores and coffee houses and things like that, you may be deciding that you're wanting to change gears with that in order to infuse that environment in which you're in with, again, more of a sense of excitement and connection and a kind of imaginative nature to it as well. So, the Libra full moon is going to be taking place in your ninth house on the 13th of April. And that is going to be highlighting, again, the desire to expand yourself, to expand your horizons. You may be really, but with Neptune also moving into your third, you may really enjoy reading. So I would, and engagement with creative, imaginative media. So I would definitely recommend playing with that while that's there for like the coming 14 years. But the full moon in your ninth house could have you feeling a little bit, again, stir crazy, where like you're kind of wondering, where is it that I want to be? Where you settle on that might be far away. So you may want to travel or just look at different scenery, experience a new place. So I would really recommend doing that, at least on a lower level of check out a new place this month, because it's likely to really bring to you something that you have probably subconsciously felt is lacking for a little bit. So that then is also probably going to bring up some questions about assertion versus harmony when it comes to your plans. So also that which is around you versus that which is far away, that which you know versus that which you are wanting to learn or to study. You will need to bring that into a sense of balance because you may be feeling of two minds about that, basically. So needing to needing to look at both sides of anything that winds up coming up around something that you're wanting to study or learn about or go and experience. Now, Mars will also then be moving into your seventh house, which is bringing a lot of enthusiasm and energy to your partnerships and your relationships and agreements and things like this. So, this could indicate that there's a conflict coming up for you, just straight up. That Mars is going to be opposing Pluto, which is in your first house. So, if you don't want a conflict, I would just make it a rule right now, like no matter what happens, I am not going to contribute to any sort of a conflict. If something gets conflictual, I'm just going to be like, okay, cool, and not engage. So you may really be wanting to socialize, and yet for a little while, before Mars clears Pluto here, you may just feel like, man, I try and be cool to people. I try and just go out there and be me, and own who I am. And people are weirdly reactive. And so if that's the case, just wait it out a little bit because that opposition is a huge deal between Mars and Pluto. And the fact that it's running across uh, your first house and seventh house, while Neptune, which is ruled by Mars at this point, because it's in Aries, while that has just stepped into your environment and is causing a little bit of confusion, this could definitely play out as I'm just showing up and I don't know why, but people are being weird. So yeah, I would just wait that out if it's a bit strange. And also, if someone really runs afoul of you and you have authority over them, try to be merciful. That's basically the way that I will put that. And yeah, avoiding conflict. So, with the sun moving into your fourth house this month, there are themes of home and family and your roots that are going to be taking up more of your focus for a little while as well. You may feel really tapped into like who you are. Again, this is coming up pretty repeatedly throughout this month for you of like who I am individually and my power and my control over myself. And I think that you're really like tapping into that in a fascinating way in this month. And you're probably focusing on like where you come from and who you are deep down inside and what's going on in your core. Now, this can also have you, for instance, if every time you go out into the world, people are being weird as heck, you may find that for a little while here that you are wanting to just be at home and enjoy your life from that place. You you may wind up then like wanting to infuse some more energy into your home. So you may want to make some changes. If there's something that has been standing out as less than exciting within your home life, you may just really want to change that. So I definitely wouldn't shy away from that. The Taurus new moon is really doubling down on a lot of this. So it's really sparking up a pretty intense drive for you to, again, connect with family and home and your own sense of roots. And there's likely to be very little patience for compromise within that area for you around the 27th. So I would really watch out for that because that's also then tapping into the opposition between Mars and Pluto, and that could really get out of hand. But um, it it's very likely to me with this new moon in this place and with everything else that's going on in this month for you that you are making a major point of it to deeply reconnect with yourself and to like reclaim your energies, so to say, from other people and from any sort of like past experiences and from any like responsibility that you feel or expectations that you feel like you need to meet of other people. I think that you're really just trying to pull that back during this period of time and then move forward from that place, probably a bit later in the year here, maybe even in May. We'll have to see what that brings as it comes. Because honestly, I did the whole yearly thing, but we're getting far enough away from that to where I'm like, wait, what was going on in May? So, yeah, we'll talk about that next month. But Venus moving into your third house in addition to Neptune. So it's going to be joining up with Neptune in your third house there. And again, that is really making pretty lovely what's around you. So again, this like the sun in the fourth, Neptune and Venus in the third, the grounds of where you live, the connections that you have, you may really want to be beautifying these and harmonizing these quite a bit and feel a lot of energy toward that end. So if you are again at home a lot during this period of time, you could definitely take on either like a course of study that you're doing from home or doing a lot of reading and infusing with imagination and joy and beauty your home life in that way, imaginatively, or again, beautifying your space so that you're able to enjoy it more. But yeah, I think that is pretty much what I have for you, Aquarius. So thank you so much for being here, and I hope that that was helpful. And let's go ahead and move forward to Pisces here. Okay, so for Pisces, we have Neptune moving into your second house. I have just discussed this more broadly in a longer video because this is a 14-year transit that you're going to be experiencing around this time. At this time, sorry, this is a Mercury retrograde. I'm at the end of the video, so my brain is like, okay, we can do it, we can make it. But yeah, this is a 14-year long transit. You're going to be experiencing this for a while, but because it has just moved into this house, you're more likely to experience it as a a thing that you notice. Neptune, over the course of the 14 years, there's periods of time where it's going to go pretty under the radar, but right now, probably not so much because it's new and it'll be felt as like, okay, this is something I haven't really experienced before because none of us, the last time that Neptune went into Aries was 165 years ago. So we've all never experienced these transits before. So with Neptune moving into your second house, this is bringing a much more etheric, dreamy, expansive, and optimistic energy to your sense of security and self-worth, to your finances, your income, and your own personal resources. And so this could be having you feel less materialistic for sure, It's an interesting place to have Neptune because it does really spiritualize the area. And this is a relatively materialistic place in our charts, even though we do see like emotional resources and talents and things like that also show up in this place. But yeah, you're likely to be tapping into much more questions of like, what is it really that money offers me? It definitely offers us a lot because we've all agreed that it's necessary, apparently. But um, it's really the why that I think is going to be motivating you a lot more than the how or the fact of, that, well, we need money. And so I'm going to make as much as I can. I think it's going to be more a matter of, does this purchase increase my quality of life? Does working this hard for this amount of resources, is that enhancing or diminishing my quality of life? Because it always does a bit of both, you know? And is that balance correct for you? Are you optimistic and hopeful about a second stream or a new stream of income? Um, Things like this. Also, really infusing some imagination even into your sense of self. And so you may really be starting to value your imagination, your values, valuing your values much more, and your what you contribute, what you have to contribute, and recognizing that on a more again energetic level and just seeing that for what it is and being able to embrace that and be kind to yourself about that, basically. Now, this could also then bring in some confusion around your resources and your income and things like this. And again, those questions of quality of life as well, pardon me, that could really also be brought up by this Neptune. And it will from time to time in the coming 14 years. But I would say, one, that's natural. There's nothing wrong with that. And it doesn't mean that you're on the wrong track. That's just what Neptune does in order to have you maybe consider another possibility in order to continue to lead it down the path that it's trying to bring you. But otherwise, it should just be a really beautiful thing that is kind of going a little bit deeper. It's been on your personality for a while in your first house, and now it's going a little bit deeper into now your second house. So the Libra full moon is going to be taking place in your eighth house of interdependencies and intimate relationships in which we feel vulnerable, as well as like contracts and things like that that we can get into that wind up intertwining us in terms of resources with others. So there may be a major need to find balance between self-sufficiency and dependency around this period of time, and that can go in either direction in terms of people dependent on you or vice versa, and a sense of a need to possibly bring one of those kinds of connections around to a close with this being a full moon. But ultimately, you're probably just looking at it as something that you would like to see go a bit differently and therefore need to address. There may be matters of trust which need to also be discussed around this full moon in Libra in the middle of the month as well. Yeah, I'm not really sure how else that would wind up playing out, other than there may be some sense of psychological needs that you're recognizing that you're trying to address also around this period of time. And that would be then feeding into the fact that Pluto has just gone into your 12th house back in last November. And that's also still pretty new. So I have another video going through all of that, so I won't get into it too much. But that may also be another way that you wind up experiencing that. Now, Mars is going to be moving into your sixth house, which is not too bad. That is where Mars tends to do pretty well. And this is going to bring some enthusiasm and energy to your daily routine and your daily life. So when it comes to your work and stuff, you're very unlikely to not have the energy for it, and to find it too boring to do, and or to feel too much in a rut. Like with Mars here, if you have felt in a rut, you'll be very willing to actively make the changes that are necessary, in order to feel more excited by the actions that you take, the energy that you expend in your daily life and your routine. Now, the only thing that I would caution about with this is that be careful not to run afoul with coworkers or in your working environment with Mars opposite to Pluto and Mars in that sixth house. That is something to keep in mind. Also, you might be a little hard on yourself, and that could be a little bit unhealthy, if you're being a little bit too rough with yourself emotionally and spiritually even, with that opposition playing out. But that'll at least let up by the end of the month when those are no longer applying to that opposition. Now, the sun will then be moving into your third house, and that will be bringing your focus more to the people, places, and things around you. So you could be socializing more and connecting more with others. You may be wanting to communicate a lot more. You may be learning really interesting things, either from reading or communication with others, connecting to other people around you, or through some other course of study. You could be really in becoming more enlightened about something in a way that is pretty exciting as well. So that should be pretty nice and decent. And then the Taurus new moon is going to wind up playing into that, and it's going to be igniting a spark of a kind of intense drive that you have in order to really like experience the environment around you, like to tap in. So for instance, I wouldn't be surprised if around, especially that full moon around the 27th, if you're like, I've got to get out. I've got to go socialize. I've got to go experience the community. I'm going to look up when there is a festival, or I'm going to look up when there's a market or something, and I just want to, or go to a park. I just want to get out and be around people. So that's going to be a pretty strong drive of yours a bit later in the month here. And one thing is, when it comes to your communication, I would just be a little bit careful about being too impatient with people or being uncompromising with people, because that can definitely be a thing. And you could have a verbal argument with someone for sure, especially someone in the community, but it doesn't have to be. This could be a working thing. This could be a friend. This could be over technology. Argument is likely with that. So if you want to avoid it, just try and make a rule of it, basically. Also, it might be wise for you to avoid crowds. It's not so much a thing with the opposition between Mars and Pluto in the sixth and 12th houses, but the sun and moon will be at a T square to those in your third house of the things around you. So it may not even be that you are getting into an argument or a fight. It may be that you're witnessing something like that, but you're much more likely to encounter that kind of a thing um, in your communities, basically. So now, finally, Venus is moving into your second house of, again, security, resources, income, and that is going to be bringing some benefit and enjoyment to this area. So that should be pretty nice, and it should be increasing your ability to earn and making you feel a lot more comfortable and able to indulge in and enjoy the resources that you have available to you. So, for instance, this doesn't always have to be like spending money. You may have and own, and therefore have as a resource, like bath stuff that's nice, or something else that's really enjoyable that maybe you don't always give yourself the time to enjoy, I would be thinking about those kinds of things that you have that you really enjoy, but that sometimes you forget to indulge in at times. And yeah, other than that, it should be having you feel pretty good and solid about yourself, your talents, where you're standing, and your ability to be self-sufficient and take care of yourself is likely to also be something that you're just able to really feel comfortable with and harmonious with. So yeah, I think that that is pretty much what I have for you, Pisces, for April. Thank you so much for being here, and I hope that you enjoyed this reading, and I will talk to everyone later. Bye.